Jujutsu Kaisen sequel is absolutely insane. In a 60-year timescape, Yuta's marriage with Maki is confirmed, with their grandchildren becoming the new MCs. But that's not all. Aliens invade Earth to migrate 50,000 of their people to the planet. And on top of that, Yuji Itadori and Satoru freaking Gojo are name dropped as their legend lives on. So I'm here to break down everything in the new sequel. Now, in the opening page of Jujutsu Kaisen sequel, a bombshell is immediately dropped. In the vast universe, aliens discover Earth in the year 2086. Their race is called Sumerians, and their mothership carries 50,000 of their own, as they wish protection from Earth as they are refugees. The king of the Sumerian race is informed of Japan, and in their data they believe the greatest power on Earth was meant to be the USA. But consulting America, they state diplomatic missions are recognized as Japan's responsibility. This is because in the original manga, within chapter 270, when America asked Japan about cursed energy 60 years ago, Maki revealed that they need to save the soldiers who were in the US military by using Yuji and Hana to get rid of the cursed objects inside of them. She then explained that the entire world was witnessing Sukuna's fight with Gojo as Meme was broadcasting it. However, they eventually believed it was just a phenomenon that occurred in Tokyo. However, what about Tengen's barrier and Japan having a monopoly on cursed energy? They need to be upheld to keep the status quo, right? Well, in chapter 270, it revealed that Tengen is dead, but Sukuna's finger is playing the role of upholding the barriers since her remnants were found inside it. So as long as it's preserved, everything will be fine, given the fact that Sukuna's soul moved on in the samsara cycle to go north to be reborn as a good person as seen in chapter 271. The 1/20th part of his soul within the final finger doesn't exist anymore, and since it's an indestructible cursed object as well, Yuji claimed everything is alright. Now, as a result, the Sumerian race then discover that there's a group of people in Japan that possess a similar power to themselves, and that's the ability to use cursed energy, and they call themselves sorcerers. This is where a picture of Yuta and Maki's grandkids are shown, farming all kinds of aura as they embark on their journey to become the strongest. Now, after this epic introduction, the story rewinds a few years, showcasing Yuta Akatsu speaking with his grandkid named Yuka. He is extremely close with her, having a loving relationship that the children of the original series only dreamed of having. Like, imagine Megumi and having a dad like Kozu. That shit ain't gonna happen anymore, right? As a result, Yuta got to go fishing with his kids, play games, and have peaceful walks in the beautiful scenery. But unfortunately now, you're gonna have to get the tissues out. Yuta dies. With his death coming soon and they know it's gonna happen, he decides to pass on Rika's ring to Yuka because she's a little too mischievous and she really wanted it. We know this to be true from the glimpse of her we saw in the original manga in chapter 271.5. Because in the year 2080, 6 years prior to the sequel, we get to see Yuka was the one rummaging through Yuta's possessions and found Panda. But with the years passing by, Yuta now thinks it's time for Yuka to try her best to become a strong sorcerer, with the ring having the power to watch over her. Another 4 years passed by, and we learn Maki Zenin had passed away, which resulted in Yuta getting weaker and weaker. She was the whole reason he had the idea of getting stronger and wanted to protect his friends. She was the reason he kept on living, and without her, that is all gone. His life force, his curse energy, his will to live goes away with it. No one ever thought Maki would be the one to die first as well. But in that grieving moment, on top of Yuta's coffin with everyone leaving the funeral, it's a sad moment, he's now passed, Yuka decides to become the strongest, just like he once was. However, Yuta's daughter, not his granddaughter, Yuka's mother. She asks for Rika's ring back, stating that her brother Tsurugi should receive it instead. She is not worthy of its power and has no right to own it. Now this is important to know, but the ring was registered into the Gojo clan storehouse. Remember, Yuta Akatsu became the acting head of the Gojo clan because he is a distant relative through their shared ancestor Sugawara Michizane, and he was one of the strongest sorcerers, fitting the Gojo clan's tradition of selecting powerful individuals to become their leader. Eventually, we meet Tsurugi, who has received the ring despite Yuka's plea. She reminisces about all her training, hoping to become a worthy sorcerer that gains acknowledgement to receive the ring her grandpa entrusted to her. Meanwhile, we meet a new antagonist, where Gege is showcasing how times have changed. The villain is playing video games with a child, questioning the boy's psyche on his view of life, as in the value that he bestows upon it. This sets the seed of what we are about to see, as the villain claims if the child thinks death and violence are normal, then they would have no problem ending up as an energy source battery. Now the human trafficker villain, what he's referring to is what we see in movies like The Matrix, where humans are used as an energy resource to power the world and make money. We learn the Japanese that have latent curse energy powers are getting kidnapped more than ever. Now in Kyoto, children especially have gone missing, and the police have not been able to catch wind of who is doing so, believing that sorcery is involved. That's why Yuta's grandchildren, now aged 16 and 17, they have joined Jujutsu High and have taken on the mission to help. Now this isn't some ass pull, you just have to connect the dots. In the original manga, the USA and China found out that curse energy was real. Kinjaku dropped a bombshell that cursed spirits exist, right? That's the reason the USA sent 800 of their military to join the Culling Game and kidnap Japanese sorcerers. That was the whole point in the first place, and they wanted to use Gojo's unlimited curse energy as an infinite resource. But guess what? 60 years later, it seems as though this idea has come to fruition, but for regular folk, as Japanese citizens fetch a high price on the black market. Now whilst being briefed, they meet their third member, who is none other than an alien. His name is Malulu Val-Ul Yeluru. His name is Malulu Val-Ul Yeluvri. Malulu Val-Ul Yeluvri. Yelovri. Yeah, Malulu Val-Ul Yelovri. That's my breast, guys. Now with such a mouthful of a name, they assume that this alien is a human but is a foreign sorcerer. It was already mentioned in JJK chapter 136 that few sorcerers and curses appear overseas, and Yuka insinuates this once again. However, being an alien, learning the culture of humans and the customs of this world, Maru doesn't understand shit that's going on. But then, we get a huge reveal. Gege's sequel isn't just throwing in aliens for shock value. This reveal actually connects back to one of Jujutsu Kaisen's story of the theme of coexistence. In the original series, the big question was whether humans and curses could live side by side, or whether their relationship was doomed to be defined by destruction. Yuji embodied that struggle. He carried Sukuna but still believed in protecting people, constantly questioning whether monsters and humans could ever share the same world. Now in Monjuro, Gege has expanded that same dilemma into a cosmic scale. Maru, secretly representing the Sumerian race, isn't here to conquer it. He's here to observe humans, to see if earthlings with powers can live in harmony with them. It's the same old question in the new era. Can beings born from a totally different world actually coexist? And this is where the Yuji parallels kick in once again. Yuta's granddaughter Yuka immediately channels that same energy, whilst everyone else ditches Maru the moment he says he won't interfere or be useful. Yuka treats him like an actual person. She offers him Japanese food, giving him a taste of culture, and that simple act breaks the barrier between them. She then vents about her brother, how they are at the same power level as sorcerers, but since Suguri's perception of hard work is easier to understand through his bodily workouts, they believe he is better suited as the next head. This hurts Yuka because her brother wasn't even close with Yuta Akatsu, nor does he understand the sentimental value that ring has for her. She just wants to be strong and understood by her family, recognized as worthy. However, learning all of this, Maru the alien suggests they both finish the mission alone so that Yuka can get all the credit. And although it's against the rules, she goes ahead with the plan. They start to search for leads or any clues regarding the kidnapper, and they actually discover what's going on. Yuka figures out that the path people walk is imbued with the enticement of curiosity for the target to fall prey to the villain. It must be a barrier technique that captures children quite easily. Gege then drops a massive reveal that ties the sequel right back to Jujutsu Kaisen. We learn Mula has a twin brother, the same sinister figure that we saw on page 1 that was with the king. His brother rejects him, belittles him as useless, and refuses to understand him. No matter how much Mula tries to bridge the gap, their relationship only spirals further into resentment. Mula wants to solve his own bond with his twin and the alien race migrating to Earth as refugees. Now, Yuka's response to Mula is pretty interesting. She states, "Don't push your ideal shape of sibling relationships onto me. This is a problem that will repeat again and again." But as we all know, just like Megumi, Yuji, and the others, this is just a story setting up a lesson for her to learn after getting into Jujutsu. Eventually, they meet up with Sugiri and close in on the barrier technique's location. They set up tape, but before they know it, a child is already running through it, enticed by the villain's technique. Now it's too late, and we get this sick panel of a curse grabbing him with its hands and teleporting him away. This makes them realize that the sorcerer they're dealing with must be pretty skilled, and Sugiri then states they should go report this and he will go in alone. But before they know it, he too is teleported. The katana is left behind because it's a cursed tool. The barrier repels anything that has a high level of energy to prevent sorcerers from destroying their plan. However, interestingly, we learn Sugiri has a heavenly restriction just like his grandmother Maki and Toji. Toji was born with literally zero curse energy, completely cut from it. But the trade-off was that his body was pushed to the absolute peak of human potential. Maki eventually reached this level of power after losing Mai. Their reflexes, muscle control, strength, and speed, it reached levels that made them a natural predator for sorcerers and curses. And I guess that's why the manga does a pun about the hunter now becoming the hunted. Anyway, Mula then gets pissed that giving up on your ideals is for when you get wounded and actually try. There is no need for Yuka to feel embarrassed when she hasn't. So since he won't give up on his twin, she shouldn't either. And guess what? She says, nah, I won't go save him. Instead, she will show her resolve by punching him. This is where the scene cuts to our new antagonist who has Tsurigi captured. Kyoto was perfect for his barrier technique since it's a city built like a grid. Tsurigi claps back that he must be stupid to do such a crime where the headquarters of sorcery resides. But none of that shit matters to this villain. He's going to give up the human trafficking business soon because he has discovered that aliens have arrived on Earth. We then learn some insane history through him, and that is Gojo's generation of students, they all became legends. 68 years ago, after the Culling Game, a treaty that I mentioned early in the video was signed for Japan to deal with any sorcery type activity. Now Satoru freaking Gojo and Yuji Itadori, they're regarded as great men who possess phenomenal power that restored order to the world. However, right now, with the generations going by, sorcerers have only gotten weaker and weaker. So the idea of using them as an energy source in business, it's also dwindling out. This resulted in the worth of Japanese people dropping, much like a stock on a market. So our villain is deciding to make one last sale before he bows out by cashing in Sugiri. We then get this insane panel of all the kids he's captured in product bags tags. And again, for those of you that have seen The Matrix, Altered Carbon, or any cyberpunk-esque show, this is a common practice. Like, take a look at this. I definitely feel like JJK took some inspiration. Anyways, our MC states that he's pathetic, not being able to get proper work, relying on kids for their money, whilst of course he's getting whacked in the face multiple times. The enemy states the more he speaks to children, the more he hates them. He starts going JoJo on my guy, smacking him up non-stop whilst giving him a lecture about his views. The land they're fighting on is basically a symbol of neglect and collapse from a past era that Yuji, Yuta, Maki, Megumi and all them lived in. They can't live up to that past era anymore, they're not around, right? But as he beats him up to a pulp, Yuka arrives with the alien blasting the door open. The way they found him was through Mula's unique ability. Since they are connected by blood, Mula can harmonize their existences together to a balance, which will then give them a signal on his location. Now, before Mula can scream out that they will save the children, Yuka interrupts, challenging her brother. They begin fighting each other in a sibling rivalry in the middle of a mission, making it quite a dysfunctional family, and it runs in their bloodline, I guess, you know what I'm saying? They are part Zenin, part Gojo, so yeah. Now, remember that earlier we found out that they are on equal footing in terms of power, but there's an inferiority complex within both our MCs. Even so, Sugiri does a left-right good night, coming out victorious against his sister. Yuka then remembers his training. Bro is lifting and swinging around 140 kg on his sword like it's bloody nothing. Obviously, the heavenly restriction is putting in the work, but that's just insane for a 17-year-old to do. So, wallowing in pity, Yuka then directs her attacks to the villain instead. She then activates her dog bite claws, farming aura to kill the villain. However, he laid a trap beforehand, which allows him to teleport with his weapon, instantly gaining the upper hand. But eventually, her bro joins the fight with his katana, where the sparks created are carried onto the blade, making it stronger. He then tells his sister that he's proud that she's gotten stronger, and because of that, he will work even harder. Now, this is where we learn something very important, and you need to concentrate. We learn that in contrast to Yura having a close relationship with Yuta Akatsu, Sugiri was close to Maki Zenin instead. He was always stuck by Maki's side, playing with her, capturing wild snakes, and even fixing his boo-boos. Eventually, Maki would inform him that they are the same. This chapter shows us a very telling moment between the two, and it immediately sets up the contrast with Yuta and Yuka's relationship. Maki has always been defined by loss, her heavenly restriction, the Zenin clan's rejection, and most of all, Mai's death. Her entire philosophy is that strength is born from sacrifice. It's an equivalent exchange at the cost of deep personal pain, right? And that's exactly what she passes on to her grandson, Sugiri. She tells him to lose something will become your strength, but that blade will also harm you. It's a lesson forged in trauma, teaching him that his worth comes from enduring suffering. Then comes the symbolic moment with the ring. She justifies her decision by stating, Sugiri, you don't need it because you're already strong. Now for Yuka, the ring was given as a gift of love, a charm of protection that made her feel chosen by Yuta. But for Sugiri, it's forced onto him as a decree of the Gojo clan, not something that he wants, but something he's told he needs, with the chilling line, your will doesn't matter. So you're probably wondering, what does this mean, ABD? I don't understand. The reading comprehension curves, everything, right? Okay, basically, what was once a symbol of compassion for Yuka, it has now become a symbol of oppression for Sugiri, turning the same object into two completely different legacies. That is why Sugiri then declares he will gain acknowledgement through his own means by becoming strong. He was trained by Maki after all, and they will realize he doesn't need the ring, so he will hold onto it until the time comes, so Yuka will have to wait. But eventually, it's revealed that they have won the fight. However, the trafficker hasn't given up yet. He connects his energy to every child that he has captured, intending to teleport all of them away with him. And then, that's when the truth is finally revealed. Mula's third eye pops out, knocking him out instantly and saving the day. That's when our MC MCs discover that the rumors are true. Aliens have arrived on Earth. At the Kyoto Future Science Museum, Japan's Ministry of Health is debating if they should treat the Sumerian aliens like a pathogen. Basically, the government is saying, we don't know their religion, language, or culture. We don't know if they carry diseases or unknown effects. So the safest thing is to treat them like a virus, right? But here's the crazy part. The moment you do that, the story states it could trigger a declaration of war. So essentially, if sorcerers treat the Sumerians like curses instead of people, the world is finished. As a result, they hold a meeting with the Sumerian diplomacy specialists. As the meeting proceeds, Usami steps in to welcome the alien, but you can already feel the mistrust boiling underneath. The Sumerian thank Earth for welcoming them, but the Japanese representatives are shocked. They didn't even know the aliens could speak Japanese. And it turns out that in America, they were already talking in English, and the US didn't bother sharing that intel with Japan. Instead, they just told the sorcerers to quickly ask the aliens for their superior technology. And that sounds quite right to me. The USA do be like that for their self-interest. Like, imagine if they had oil.
Oil? Who said something about oil, bitch, cooking?
The tension then cranks up real fast. Japan can't rely on help from other countries. And then the Sumerian diplomat drops a bombshell. Their king wants to be present at the talks. But here's the twist. The aliens won't allow it unless there's zero hostility. Basically, they don't play to human politics because to them, negotiation only works if both sides show absolute trust. Something humans clearly suck at, just look at our history. They even dropped the bar that it's meaningless to disarm their king. Meaning that this dude has hands rated E for everyone. Now, when we actually meet the king, his presence alone reminds humanity of Sukuna. His aura alone is overwhelming. So heavy that humans in the room genuinely wonder if they're even still alive while shooting bricks. Usami then even has to admit that if they were serious, the aliens could bring down our country very easily. This statement alone automatically puts them at a special grade status. Because remember that in the original Jujutsu Kaisen manga, Kenjaku claimed a special grade is someone capable of wiping out a nation with one hand behind their back. It is reserved for sorcerers with such immense strength that their destructive potential is immeasurable. So the humans now, they're all thinking, wait a second, we've been getting weaker and weaker, and now we have to deal with this Sukuna level calamity? What the fuck do we do? They have already bent over backwards approving all their requests. So should they just do some armament shit thanking Eren for destroying the world? Now, given what I said and all the glazing and the power-ups, what do you think the humans do? They say Yuta and Maki's grandchildren will be assigned this mission. And then I hear the most shonen shit I have ever read. Guess what it is? The power of friendship. They need to melt the hearts of the Sumerian aliens without politics, but with the spirit of the next generation, proving coexistence is possible. Now, I know geopolitics is hard to understand and kind of like a bruh moment, but Gege is introducing a lot of it, so I'm going to break it all down. We learned that decades ago, after the treaty, Japan grew overconfident. They hid behind international agreements whilst riding a dangerous wave of nationalism. Like, think about it, they had a monopoly on curse energy. No one could F around and find out against Japan anymore. They had Yuji, Maki, and Yuta being special grades that are legendary. They are capable of taking down an entire country on their own, like I said. Not Megumi, of course, he apparently died to a grade 3 curse.
Khatam, bye bye, tata, goodbye, gaya.
But that complacency nearly doomed them before, and now history is threatening to repeat itself. As the discussion unfolds, the danger becomes clear. Isolation will always breed fear, and fear always breeds violence. If news of the Sumerian aliens leaks to the public, that fear could quickly spiral into hatred and armed conflict. And if that happens, war is inevitable. This is when we snap back to our MCs, discussing what they discovered in chapter 1 and getting up to speed with everything. They learn that the threat is equal to Ryumin Sukuna, which allows the story to give even more revelations that we were dying for. Apparently, Yuta told his grandkids the complete story of JJK, speed reading the entire manga, informing them that's how he received his forehead scar. They start believing what the child trafficker stated regarding aliens. I mean, each kid he was kidnapping was worth $50 million each or more, so why would he stop such a lucrative business if he wasn't serious? They then debate about Maru, and they agree on one thing: he must be from out of this world. But Yuka suggests they should check. But the logic is very clear. Usami introduced Maru as an inspector from a security treaty country, so officially they're not allowed to know his true origin just yet. This clash between the siblings perfectly sets up the dynamic of the story. Yuka wants to believe in Maru to give him a chance at humanity, but Sugiri sees only a threat, convinced that putting faith in an outsider could be their downfall. They then squeeze more info out of the trafficker. He informs them that information leaks are inevitable, especially in government offices that can barely function after the AI regulation era. They're so outdated that he even jokes they might as well go back to pen and paper. It's basically Gege clowning on how fragile our real world systems are. Like, look at the real world, look at our actual politicians right now. Every bloody country is cooked, mate. Nepal's cooked, Qatar's cooked, the Celestial Dragons are cooked, America's cooked, UK's cooked. Every country is getting cooked out here, and we can't even tell what's real or not with AI. Anyway, Yuka, she's still skeptical, and she can't wrap her head around how casually everyone just accepts that aliens are real. The trafficker then roasts her, pointing out the irony. She's a sorcerer, someone who literally fights curses and lives off the supernatural every day, yet she finds aliens hard to believe. They then learn that the spaceship is hovering above Japan, but how can it be left undetected, ABD? They even cloak the whole goddamn thing from human detection with a barrier technique. So that's equally impressive, just as terrifying. However, resources will eventually run out, and that resupply moment could be the turning point where Yuka and Sugiri witness the truth with their own eyes. But as they wait, the siblings finally clash over the ring. Sugiri refuses to give it back to Yuka, and for the first time, he opens up about why. But in the meanwhile, Maru has his own confrontation, meeting his twin brother. Now, unlike Maru, who's been living amongst the sorcerers, Cross immediately reminds him of his true mission to observe humanity. The aliens already know that humans are just like them. Good people and bad people exist everywhere. But as Cross explains, what actually matters is whether their philosophies, values, and sense of right and wrong can align. Without that, coexistence means nothing. We then discover Maru has no influence over the Simurian Council. Their opinions are split. Some want peace, others are ready for war. And when war is mentioned, Maru snaps. To him, conflict should never be an option. But his brother claps back that if Maru believes that, he must prove it by continuing to gather information, as that's his duty as a warrior. Maru tries offering food to his brother as a way of connecting, but Cross rejects it, choosing instead to head straight to Jujutsu Tech to see it for himself. However, that's where things spiral down once again. Sugiri runs into Cross, mistaking him for Maru. And being already skeptical of his nature, Sugiri is shocked when Cross brushes him off with arrogance, being rude. This only fuels Sugiri's suspicion and resentment.
We start chapter 3 with a chilling discovery. A man-eater has appeared in the prefecture of Gifu. This brings our newly formed trio to another case. With the reports of 2 victims and 3 witnesses, we learn the bizarre story of a shark that swims through the forest, leaving torn bodies behind. As the gang make their way there, Tsurugi thinks back to the last chapter when Maru switched up on on him. You know, my boy ain't used to being on the receiving end when disrespect is dished out. Little did he know it wasn't Maru, it was his twin brother. Hence why, with Maru acting his usual self, this journey isn't as awkward as Tsurugi thought. So he decides to break things down, explaining cursed spirits and why this specific case is quite odd. Because for decades, curses have been confined to Tokyo. However, suddenly, just as aliens decide to show up, they are called to suppress the threat in a random prefecture such as Gifu? Like, this doesn't make sense. Unless the shark is possibly from outer space. Yeah, this is the conclusion we're coming to, guys. This is it. Now, at this point, everyone, including your mom, knows Maru is an alien. But in hearing this accusation, my boy outright confirms it to the gang, saying that this shark has nothing to do with them and they do not eat humans. Yeah, well, I guess that rules out the Sukuna alien theory. Regardless, with Maru spilling the beans, he decides to keep quiet as, you know, he's on a delicate mission to understand if humans can be trusted in the first place. Hence, he refuses to indulge too much information to his new human friends. Luckily, Yuka believes him, saying he doesn't seem to be a bad person. Well, Tsurugi isn't so convinced. So when Yuka splits off to confirm the witness's testimony, my boy doubles down on his doubts, telling Maru that his alien-ass race better not be planning a full-scale invasion behind the scenes. This question is warranted, and Maru doesn't even deny it, because if he cannot bring valid evidence that the humans have similar morality, then the Sumerians are going to drop in like a nuke and take over. Knowing he is trying to stop this outcome, Maru shifts the burden of guilt, questioning Tsurugi if humanity really developed morality and reason to speak such a way about the Sumerians. Maru explains that this migration wasn't by choice, so Maru cuts to the chase and asks Tsurugi why he doesn't like him, in which Tsurugi responds,
"You're honestly an idiot."
yeah, Maru just wants friends, okay? Even his own twin thinks he's an idiot. So hearing this makes him really sad, but Tsurugi calls him out. Why the other day he waited a whole gosh dang minute before using his special Dajjal beam cannon to save the child. When Maru responds saying he couldn't intervene due to his orders, Tsurugi flipped the entire script back on him. Were these orders more important than a child's life? Yep, this leaves Maru speechless. Because all this time, it seems the Sumerians were looking down on the humans, questioning if they are even moral beings. Yet this question should have been thrown back at them. Before my guy has time to process this, the floating shark monster finally appears. Yeah, it's an old man. Well, not just any old man. He's a retired graduate from Jujutsu High. Osada, a former sorcerer. Hence his ability to become a shark. Using seance, he can draw the power of anything he wears. Regardless, Osada reveals that the man-eating culprit they are looking for isn't him. Rather, it's a tiger named Taronosuke, who he is currently also tracking. My guy goes on to explain that 25 years ago, foreign traders smuggled a pair of tigers into the mountains of Gifu. Taronosuke is their grandchild. After Japan got a boost of funds due to the Paranormal Foundation, they had repaired all the solar panels in the area. The excess heat then dried up the river and the mountain's ecosystem collapsed. Taronosuke was forced to descend into the villages in search of water and prey. To the frightened locals, his attacks looks like the work of a monster, but to Osada, Taronosuke is an old friend, a beast he once understood with nothing more than a glance. And here lies the tragedy. Osada doesn't want to kill Taronosuke, he wants to save him. Even as people die, even as fear spreads, he still believes that there's a bond between them worth protecting. However, Tsurugi channels his uncle Megumi and outright says, nope, beasts and monsters that have taken human life must be exterminated. The dialogue between the two plays homage to Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 6, where back at the detention center, Megumi tells Yuji that not everyone is worth saving, as the person you might save could realistically end up killing someone in the future. Funny enough, this is also the philosophical weight of this chapter. Osada embodies compassion, the belief that even something feared as a man-eating tiger is not truly truly evil, that it is too simply suffering, just like any of us, and deserves a second chance. Humans were the ones that caused its circumstance, and now the same humans were to kill it? To him, that's injustice. Rather than that, Osada plans to take responsibility and look after it alone. But Tsurugi stands on the other side. His duty is to the victims and their families. To him, mercy means nothing if it comes at the cost of innocent lives. And so, two ideology clashes. The will to protect one's bonds versus the responsibility to protect society. Osada cuts this conversation short. With his shark nose, he's able to smell the blood on the tiger and instantly heads to his old friend, who actually tricked him. Yep, the tiger was playing chess. He smeared blood on a tree whilst hid on top of it, just so he could gank Osada and eat him. Luckily, Tsurugi got there in time, otherwise this old man would have been another casualty. Maru tries to stop Tsurugi from doing what he gotta do, but after being nearly eaten alive, Osada's like, Bonnie, you can kill the bitch. Yeah, that switch up was crazy, but I guess facing death's doors changed his mind, huh? Osada starts having a flashback to when Torinosuke was a little cub. He told him if he ever feels loneliness, then come find him. So, seeing its footprints near his house, he believed that there was a chance he could have been saved. Sadly, that wasn't the case. But we are all here for a new beginning, and so after slicing up the tiger, Tsurugi finds its little cub and passes it on to Osada, giving him a new opportunity to do things right this time around. Maru, witnessing the death of Torinosuke, feels as though it represents them and his Sumerian people. So he finally reveals the truth to Tsurugi about his mission to see if coexistence is possible. He also explains why he couldn't save the boy much earlier. His powers are tied to his twin brother, who would know instantly if he uses it, and so hesitated because he didn't want to make his brother think he was in danger and forced to use his technique. That's why he held back, not out of indifference to human life, but out of fear of worsening the impression of Earthlings in his brother's eyes. My boy really just wants the path of coexistence. And considering he wasn't really supposed to indulge this information, but did so just because he wants Tsurugi to be his nakama, says a lot. Their trust is growing. We first come to the confirmation of Maru's true identity. The intel embargo is finally lifted. Usami clocks their gender pretty quickly and tells the Okotsu Sibling that they need to do their own intel gathering by learning as much as they can from Maru. And so the trio is given yet another mission. First, it was about an unusual case of kidnapping, then a spooky shark in a forest. So you lot might be thinking, will this case be about a cursed spirit finally? Nope, it's about a boy who keeps repeating the first grade.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
So the gang goes ahead to investigate this sussy little boy. This time, however, the team is joined in by Mino, Usami's assistant. Usami is likely the child of the grade 1 sorcerer Kusakabe spoke of when he was asked who is the strongest within his own rank. So his kid might be pretty strong too, hence how Usami leveled up to the position of the acting Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mino, on the other hand, yeah, he can put up barriers, you know. Look, he's more for info gathering. In fact, Mino breaks down that the kid in question might actually be a curse user posing as a child, whilst killing the families of the original students who were supposed to enroll. Maru, just observing, is absolutely clueless on what's going on, but his relationship with the Okotsu sibling seems to be getting more natural as he reveals his age in human years, being 19. Yep, he's their senpai. He drops some Sumerian lore as well, confirming that there are different type of people within their race. However, Maru does point out that most of the Sumerians look like Tsurugi and Yuka. As Yuka and Mino head off to investigate the sussy boy's current home, the other two apprehend him after school. Now, looking at Tsurugi's face, anyone would run, and so the boy does. However, when the kid trips over, a guardian spirit appears over him. Yep, it would seem we have another Yuta Rika situation. Now, a key point to note is that this is the first time we see Maru interact with a cursed spirit, and he calls them Kalyans. Now, at first, that sounds like some random alien slang, but trust me, Gege knew exactly what he was doing. Sibling. Kalyan isn't a made-up word. In Sanskrit and Hindu mythology, Kalyana literally means blessing, well-being, or divine prosperity. Regardless, this kid reveals his name to be Masayoshi, and that 3 years ago, his mama died becoming a ghost. With her help, she made it possible for him to repeat school. As they head to his home, lo and behold, they find his mother's corpse, which he poorly buried. Tsurugi even name drops his granddaddy, reminding us of this similarity. But no, this boy is sus. Remember Yuka and Mino, who also went to the boy's house? Yeah, they are actually in a different location to the one this kid brought us to. And what did they find? More dead bodies. This boy is a serial killer. Poor Maru is here trying to cheer up this kid, telling his whole life story about losing his home, wanting a friend, a neighbor to fill the hole in his heart. He even goes ahead and requests Masayoshi to be that friend. Sadly, the moment Yuka calls and exposes everything, Masayoshi reveals he is not even a boy. He's a straight up unk. Actually, I can't even call him that. At this point, he's a granddad. Now remember, Tsurugi really wanted to avoid a war with the aliens. Heeding from Maru's words of him being connected to his brother, Tsurugi wanted to make sure that any mission going forwards, Maru will be safe and not have to use his power. Yeah, he's knocked out, and we know his third eye is connecting him to his brother as we speak. Everything around him starts levitating. His powers even extends to a nearby home of a girl and her mom. But anyways, as Maru takes his nap, whilst likely charging up an upcoming nuke, we get peak Jujutsu Kaisen combat. This curse user's power is insane. With the help of his guardian spirit, he can stitch up any skin of the dead around himself to shapeshift. The cursed spirit is called Maternal Wraith and has mother written on its apron, along with wielding a giant sewing needle for its weapon. So no doubt that the old man's story about his mother dying and becoming his guardian spirit holds some truth. Due to his old age, my guy lost his marbles more than one way and now wants to feel alive again by reliving his good old days when he was a child going to school. With that said, Tsurugi states he is strong and has the skills to be a grade 1, but my boy is Maki and Yuta's grandkid. He is from the Big 3 clan, and so even though he has 0 curse energy, Tsurugi used cursed energy.
That doesn't make no sense.
Yep, he tapped into the curse energy from his curse tool and activated new shadow style simple domain maculation. Now the simple domain maculation literally gives Tsurugi a fully automatic attack interception against anything that enters his circle. In effect, he was able to dodge and push back against his grade 1 sorcerer. At this point, Yuka and Mino finally arrive, with the latter doing all that he can do. You know, barriers. Okay, poor Mino. He's still important, alright? Yuka then surprisingly jumps in using her biting twist technique. Their combination and teamwork is incredible. The old man even points out that instead of addition, it's like multiplication. And so together, the Akotsu siblings obliterate the old man and his Walmart Rika. It turns out they weren't even fighting him. They were just going at it with the cursed spirit, who also can be shapeshifted into the skin it wears. The old man quickly disabled the duo with his sharp needles poking into their bodies. It seems like everything is about to be over. They got ganked, they got duped, it's basically done. Maki and Yuta's grandkids got outplayed. But wait, as rubbles and bones float around, everyone starts to feel a sinister energy. I think Maru's third eye is done charging up, guys.
Maru awakens his third eye. Even unconscious, it can manipulate his body to keep moving forward. And as soon as it picks his target, an overwhelming amount of aura makes the old man, he shits bricks. Maru immediately disables his Shikigami by piercing the enemy's hand by manipulating it. And then he throws a huge boulder. But despite the old man having the correct trajectory to counter it, all of a sudden it changes and smashes him right in the face. This is followed up with the kick to the dome. Although it misses, the physical strength behind it is so powerful that it destroys the floor beneath. As Sugiri cannot believe Maru was built different and this strong. But we're only just getting started, people. people. His curse technique is only gonna get more powerful. Takeda realizes he should have killed Maru instead of only knocking him out. He realized he fucked up. And whilst Maru's fight rages on, his alien brother Cross finally arrives to observe from above. And instantly, he's kinda disappointed. To him, watching Maru lose control over something as insignificant as saving a child or protecting his new human friends is pretty pathetic. Cross literally mocks him, calling him a trash older brother. But beneath that disgust, Cross is actually intrigued. He sees the bigger picture, because once humanity witnesses Maru's curse technique, the ability to bend reality itself, they'll of course panic. The sorcerer world will immediately start plotting a countermeasure, just like how they once feared Sukuna's shrine or Gojo's limitless. And that paranoia is exactly what Cross wants. It gives the aliens a perfect reason to declare an all-out war on Earth, using Maru's existence as the spark to justify their invasion. But Cross isn't worried about how the fight will end, because for the first time in the sequel, he name drops their king, and it's Dabura. This dude, every goddamn panel he's aura farming looking like a demon. But then we witness peak fiction, people. The choreography, the art, it was fire. The old sorcerer in the battle, he tries to make sense of Maru's curse technique. At first, he assumes it's just anti-gravity, but within seconds, he realizes that this power isn't bound by any human logic of Jujutsu. It surpasses everything ever recorded in the history of sorcery. The clock hands start spinning backwards and all over the place. Metal bends, the gym equipment freaks out, weights levitate, the walls twist, and the very air begins to shimmer. Even the curse energy in the atmosphere starts to lose its rules, because all of it is being rewritten by Maru's existence. And in that moment, a familiar voice cuts through the chaos. Guess who it is, people? It's Yuji Itadori. The man, the myth, the legend returns. The old man freezes as the pressure of killing intent is too similar. He felt this before, back when he fought Yuji Itadori. The memory slams into him like a freaking black flash, because Yuji was the first person who ever made him feel fear in a fight. Back in those days, after the fall of Sukuna, Magi revealed in chapter 270 that Yuji and Hana were tasked with hunting down the reincarnated sorcerers, separating them from their vessels. That means this old man was one of them, a survivor and player of the Culling Game. We know this is Yuji because he wore the same jacket and has the same scars we later see in the Ozawa epilogue in chapter 271.5. But in the past, this cursed user, he was one of the few who escaped Yuji's left-right good night, using his curse technique to change his appearance, erasing his identity to survive. All of this finally explains why Yuji Itadori became a legend 67 years later to Sugiri's generation. Essentially, he became feared by every curse user and reincarnated sorcerer. This was even confirmed back in chapter 1 of the sequel, when he was remembered as the symbol of balance in a post-Sukuna world. Now, as a special grade sorcerer, Yuji basically hunted down every single person that Kenjaku's evolution plan had unleashed on humanity. Kenjaku himself confirmed that the Culling Game had over 1,000 players at least. Each one was a sorcerer born from his experiments, as he wanted to cause evolution, right? And even after Sukuna's death, we only saw a few hundreds of these people die, so a lot of them are still roaming free. That means Yuji must have spent years cleansing them all, like the hundreds of American soldiers who had been pulled into this chaos, and much more. Anyway, the fight continues with Maru dodging all the curse users' attacks, even catching his needle in between fingers just to kick him. Then when he throws the balls, the old man counters by destroying them all. But this was just a distraction for Maru to speed blitz him to get behind. He bashes his head in, and it's not just those regular ones, like you need to cue the JoJo music right now, because this is the biggest aura I have ever seen in Jujutsu Kaisen. Like, this is even a worse beating than what Sukuna did to others with 4 hands. My man Maru is beating him so bad he's got 8 showing up. This leads to him flying into the swimming pool, but as the old man drowns there, the temperature starts boiling instantly, with it burning his skin. He can't take it and is baited to jump out, where Maru then changes the property of the water by making it ice, holding him in place. The curse user then realizes he's cooked. Maru's technique completely destroys all logic, and he's about to die with his final punch. But Sugiri comes to save the day. Now, even though he has a full heavenly restriction with a gifted body beyond normal humans, and trained from Maki, even that is not good enough. Sugiri can barely hold on and goes flying into the ground. He begs Maru that it's enough, but nothing is getting through since he's unconscious. Cross then praises his bro that he moves well despite the injuries he received when caught off guard. However, he's actually pleased with how things are going, because no matter how this plays out, whether Sugiri chooses to protect Maru or tries to kill him, it all feeds directly into their plan. So Cross orders his bro to end his misery. But things take a drastic change. Strength must be guided by empathy, or power will always end up in tragedy, because absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's what Maru the alien realizes, because watching this unfold, he sees the tiger's death as a metaphor for his own people, the Sumerians. Without understanding and moral connection, coexistence between humans and aliens is doomed. So the cub in the sequel represents Yuji's ideology living on, that even a cursed world can still give birth to hope if someone chooses to nurture it. That's why Sugiri has a character growth in chapter 6, as he is literally showing mercy and gives into Maru's ideals, as he saw Maru nurture this supposed innocent boy in chapter 4 that also lost his parents and home. Maru is the one who tells him that they can become neighbors. As a result, Sugiri decides he does not want Maru to be the catalyst of war between their races, because he knows his true heart. He puts all his effort into waking him up, but the third eye in Maru is too powerful. Like, its aura alone pushes him back. He can't even get close to him. So knowing he can't beat Maru in this state, Sugiri makes one last plea that they were supposed to be neighbors. This sparks something in Cross. He sees Sugiri stand his ground, ready to face death with his ideals close to his heart, hoping for a brighter tomorrow. And as a result, he swoops in and tells Maru to calm down, switching him off. Cross then ponders, what am I? Why did I even do that?
But he's not here out of kindness. He wants answers. What the hell did Tsurugi mean by becoming neighbors? The Sumerians lost everything. Their home, their memories, their entire world was wiped clean. He straight up asks, how could humans and Sumerians ever be neighbors when humanity couldn't even live peacefully with itself? He reminds Tsurugi that the only reason Japan found peace was after getting nuked by the allied great powers. So Cross decides to drop his own bombs for now. He tells him straight up the peaceful world that they live in, they were spoon-fed that luxury. Cross accuses Tsurugi, and by extension all of humanity, of seeing the Sumerians as dangerous, filthy, weak refugees. Where did I hear that before? Oh, and by the way, whilst all of this chaos is unfolding, the curse user that Maru literally clapped uses this moment to run for his life. If Tsurugi hadn't stepped in to stop Maru from killing a human, that geezer would have been a smear on the pavement. But his luck doesn't last long, because he immediately gets cooked by none other than Usumi. Usumi reveals his snake eye. Yep, he got the Unomaki clan inherited technique, curse speech, with just one word, stop. This nonce just freezes in place. He hasn't moved. Within seconds, this curse user gets absolutely destroyed. This also confirms something crazy. The Usumi from Gojo's era must have married into the Unomaki family, which explains why our new sensei is rocking both the curse speech and the Usami family name. Either way, after cleaning up the trash, he heads straight to Cross and tries to negotiate, asking him to let Maru recover on Earth instead instead of being sent back to their ship. His reasoning: if the other Sumerians saw Maru's damaged body, it only sparked more anger and mistrust. He's trying to prevent a war before it starts. But obviously, in Cross's perspective, there are zero reasons to trust them, and so he rejects this proposal and sends his brother back to the ship to get patched up. Speaking of patches, with his brother out of the picture, Cross takes Maru's third eye bandage and goes on an espionage mission to infiltrate the sorcerers so he can figure out what they actually believe, which brings us to Mahito.
How? I don't know.
But why does Mahito say damn, so it's not him after all? This clearly seemed that he was indeed waiting for Yuji. Tsurugi gets up in a jolt, and the first thing he thinks about is his sister, asking if Yuka is okay. Yep, luckily she ain't dead. Well, not yet. Cross tells Tsurugi they are just doing checks on her, otherwise she seems fine. In the meantime, playing dumb, he says that he heard Cross had arrived, hoping to see what Tsurugi has to say about him. Well, it works, and my boy literally questions if Cross is always pissed off. Not gonna lie, this was a funny interaction, as Cross tries to tell him that he isn't like that all the time. It's here that Tsurugi opens up. He apologizes about talking smack in regards to the potential invasion and calling Maru a freeloader. As before, he did not understand the full scope of the Sumerian circumstances until now. This honest and heartfelt apology seemed to have surprised Cross, but that's cut short with Tsurugi questioning whether Maru will be in trouble for using his technique, in which of course Cross says nah, it's gonna be okay. When Yuka finally arrives, Cross welcomes her with Maru's playful antics, and we then learn from Tsurugi what Maru displayed against the cursed user was easily on par with a first grade sorcerer. Nah, like damn what? Nah, this guy is definitely special grade. But anyways, they decide to head to, a fun fair, as Maru had wanted to go earlier. Cross, however, isn't too amused, but still plays his disguise. Slowly, he starts to be shown as someone more normal, and potentially even a very kind-hearted person. We see this fully displayed when a little boy loses his Halloween balloon, for Cross to quickly catch and return it back to him. They find out that this boy is actually lost, so Tsurugi and Mino head off to find some help. It's here that Cross tries to cheer the boy up. Well, kinda, because he straight up tells the boy to stop crying, keep quiet and patiently wait. Well, why? Well, the boy hasn't really lost his family. They're still alive. This mini rant takes Yuka and the boy out for a second, but then the boy activates his water style dojutsu. Seeing how his pep talk had completely failed, Cross relies on his acrobatic skills to cheer the kid. This actually works somehow, it just does. With that, the boy's mother finally is drawn into the scene. She finds her son and they say their goodbyes. The kid gives Cross his balloon as a thank you, but seeing the words of Halloween written on it, Cross questions what it all means. It's here where we finally get to the root of this story. Yuka explains that Halloween is a Christian holiday, which she heard once belonged to another religion. Hearing about Christianity though, Cross starts further questioning if everyone on Earth believes in it. Yuka explains how it's only followed by 20 to 30% of the world's population, but in Japan, majority of the people don't bother with religion. The country itself just adopts any and all kinds of holidays to rejuvenate the country's economy. The conversation then takes a deeper turn, with Cross following up in asking if the humans believe in one particular god. Yuka straight up says she's an atheist and then questions Cross's position in all of this, but in doing so reveals she also knows it's Cross and not Maru, like it was fairly obvious, especially when he starts cooking the little kid just for crying. But moving past his disguise being blown away, Cross continues the conversation to reveal the people of Simuria do follow one god. Yuka for some reason starts to show how out of touch she is with the concept of believing in something greater than life itself. She brings us an old practice that happened in Japan called Fumi. In 1629, Christianity was banned. Slabs with carvings of Jesus was passed around to be stepped on as a test to see who has not truly abandoned the religion. The believers would then be executed. However, However, Yuka reveals that if she were a believer, she would have stepped on the slab and just repented afterwards. To her, it's like dying for no reason. She says that she can respect other cultures and their beliefs, but can't understand why they would value it to that degree. From the perspective of an atheist, her paradigm does make sense. With no God, no judgment, no hereafter, and no accountability, the world that is important is the one we are living in. So the value of life obviously takes precedence over all things. However, her statement showcases that she can't truly put herself into the position of others and value what they treasure, i.e. become a true neighbor. Cross calls out this hypocrisy and questions if the slab were instead a living being, would she still have stepped on it? Yuka stops to think that she never thought about it that way. Cross then states that she and her brother are bozos and their way of thinking is shallow, because people like Yuka trampled on their lives unknowingly. When they did notice their plight, they would refuse to take action, and other times they would actually steal from them. But Cross takes the conversation to a new turn altogether. If things were stolen from you, it doesn't give you the right to steal from others. But he also believes that those who endure theft are very likely to engage in it themselves, and so the humans better be ready and prepare themselves. Yuka catches this as a straight declaration of war. These Sumerians want to take their planet. However, instead of reacting poorly, she actually tries to convince Cross to change his mind. How? Well, by making him tag along with her to a doctor's appointment, where we find out she's about to die in 6 months. She goes in to get a second opinion and a scan of her brain, which reveals a form of cancer. She brought Cross along to avoid being alone in confirming this tragic news, but at the same time not feel pitied, hence he was a better choice than her brother. However, instead of consolation, Cross gives us a reality check. This news of her impending death will make her remaining moments feel empty. Eventually, Yuka's mind will start resenting her situation to build hatred, asking, why me? These thoughts were once echoed within Cross's own mind, and so his self-projection stems from the future that was stolen from him as his planet suffered a man-made disaster. Yuka tries to prod and find out what exactly happened to his people so they can figure out a way to coexist. However, Cross's trust in others is at an absolute zero, and he would rather go down the route of stealing from the people of Earth rather than to compromise, only to find out in the end they will just suffer once again. Yuka then channels her inner Naruto and gives him a final speech no jutsu. She explains that hating people and stealing from them is easy, but this is the very reason it becomes an endless cycle. So Yuka proposes that together they should try to put an end to the cycle once and for all.
Jujutsu Kaisen did something we never thought was actually possible. We actually got lore and world building. The world of the alien Sumerians has been revealed. I mean, we got the king's backstory even before Sukuna's or GTA 6.
He's out of line, but he's right.
We travel across the galaxy to the planet of Sumerians and other races who are all sorcerers. The world is split into multiple races, such as the Lemurians, Shamans, and Disconte, similar to how countries on Earth work. The Lemurians consisted of these three-eyed people like Dola, Maru, and Cross, whilst the Disconte have horns, which differentiates them from each other. And so, the narration reveals the backstory of Maru and Cross, and how they died protecting their hometown from the government, which is the Disconte ruling nation. Remember, in chapter 7, Cross and Yuka talk about something similar. He states that humans like her have trampled on his people's way of life, and that's what the Disconte government did to him and his bro, by stealing, by causing famine, by causing death. And this is where their hatred comes from, as the Disconte believe that the Kalyans are monsters that need to be eradicated, whilst the Lemurians worship them. Chapter 8 basically frames why Cross thinks Yuka's way of beliefs is shallow and stupid, as Yuka claimed she doesn't understand religion and the value of faith at all. We then skip to to meeting Maru and Cross for the first time, and it's made clear that he was a benevolent and righteous king, always looking out for the greater good for his people. They're talking about Maru and Cross, who were being mischievous but now have been found. The old man explains that with how things are going, kids are starving, so they will resort to stealing or crimes to survive. However, then gives them a purpose to learn skills instead of punishing them, seeing their potential rather than wasting their lives for nothing. Cross immediately tries to throw hands with the king, but it's more playful than hostile. Dabra respects his spirit and offers the twins a deal: help him build a water canal for the camp and he'll feed them in return. They immediately get to work, whilst Dabra continues digging out the canal alone. He orders the twins to haul stones and stack them in place, and this isn't a punishment, it's actually building discipline. He's testing whether they're weak runaways or survivors who can follow orders, and to everyone's surprise, the twins don't complain. They listen and grind it out. Now, as time goes by, Maru and Cross then question regarding why he wants to build a canal. This canal isn't just a hole in the ground, it's power. This is because it connects distant lands and opens a trade route straight to Sharma, another major territory in their planet. Before this project, traveling there took a massive detour around dangerous terrain. It costs time, lives, and resources, so a shortcut helps the economy and solve their starvation issues. Now, you're probably wondering, what the hell am I reading? Well, he definitely got inspired by real life events, because this is exactly like the Suez Canal in our world, a man-made river in Egypt that connects Europe and Asia. Before it existed, ships had to sail all the way around Africa to trade goods. That took months, but once the canal opened in 1869, global trade changed forever. Like, remember in 2021 it became a big meme when a giant ship called the Ever Given accidentally blocked the Suez Canal? The entire bloody global economy went to shit for a week, where billions in trade was frozen. So what Dabra is doing here is nation building. He's rebuilding a fallen civilization. However, things are never easy. Cross mentions the racism and prejudice between the people on their planet. We learn how the Sumerians have been subjugated into this barren land. Think of Eldians stuck behind walls in Attack on Titan. Now, Cross questions, why should the Sumerian tribe take on a job so dangerous if it killed workers from other nations? Why are they forced to build something that will benefit the Disconte? The canal project, it was actually planned years ago, long before Maru and Cross were even born. But everything stopped because of a Karyan, a sacred creature of their tribe. Now, to outsiders, it was a monster. They attacked and devoured anyone who wasn't Sumerian. That led to fear spreading, and Disconte answered it with violence. Sumerian villages were destroyed. Their parents were slaughtered, even their children. The survivors were then driven into dry lands, unfit to grow crops, and forced into refugee camps. The entire tribe became outcasts, all because they refused to betray their own sacred guardian. No one else can enter this land and survive. It isn't a job they have to do, it's a job only they can do. But Cross refuses to accept that. Why should their people work for the empire that destroyed them? Why build something that only makes Disconte stronger? Then, this is for their people and their nation. He explains that revenge alone will change nothing. The people have been fighting back for years, yet they're still starving and exiled. If all they do is strike back, the cycle of violence will never end. Disconte won't change, and neither will the people of their tribe. He believes that if people from different lands and bloodlines are ever going to coexist, they must have something that connects them, a bond that flows between them across distance and time. And that bond will be this canal. It won't be a trade route. it will be a lifeline. Once it's complete, Dabura plans to carry water from the Luma River all the way to Kyama, the village where their people are slowly dying in the drylands. That water will flow through the settlements and revive dead farmlands. With clean water, even diseases among the children will finally disappear. Their people can live once again. However, Cross, he doesn't understand this mentality and he's upset. So the next day, he doesn't show up for work and Maru does. But then disaster strikes. The section they dug the day before is completely ruined. At first, suspicion falls on Cross, but Maru refuses to believe that he is a traitor. Someone else did this where they want them to fail. Now, it isn't outsiders, it's actually their own people. A group of their tribe, men sitting together, they're smoking a shisha pipe. They're openly mocking because to them, he's a traitor, someone who sold out their tribe by working with Diskunte. Rumors then spread that he's taking money from the empire and that the canal isn't for their people at all, but for the enemy. These guys basically don't want peace or coexistence, and to teach Dabura a lesson, they secretly destroying the canal at night every goddamn time. So that's when Cross heard everything and struck them. But because he respects, Cross returns to aid him the next day. We see him act like a true father that the twins needed. He's teaching them skill sets of building a dam, growing vegetation, flowers, and much more. And eventually, good news arrives.
Good news, everyone!
The village elders approve his project, and the entire settlement gathers to begin full-scale construction. So what started as a solo effort by one man, it has now become a movement. Even Jabaloma, one of the key leaders of the tribe that we see in chapter 2 and much more, he steps in to support the project. Every nearby village can see a brighter future, saving thousands of lives. This leaves Maru stunned. He's never seen so many people united before. Jabaloma, he praises leadership, but he just laughs it off. He didn't do this for recognition, he did it because he believes in the future of their people. Like, remember that it's not that if you become Hokage, everyone will acknowledge you. It's the ones who are acknowledged that can become Hokage. Now, eventually, Cross apologizes to the men he fought before. We then get a huge time skip of around 10 years as the project completes. And with the canal done, they arrive on ships. But prosperity doesn't erase pain. For example, people like Jabaloma, he still carry... I have to pause for a second. That's such an outrageous name that I have to keep saying in these reviews without laughing. Jabaloma. Anyway, this dude Jabaloma, he carries scars in his heart because he lost his daughter because of a Diskunte brutal isolational policies that made her die of hunger. So for this new alliance to work, he's forced to bury his rage, to smile beside the people who destroyed his family. Even so, hope spreads everywhere. The people drink, laugh, and celebrate under the night sky. The war is behind them, or so they think. This is Gege. Because guess what? This is the disaster Maru and Cross warned us about back in chapter 4 and 7. The day everything burned. The Diskunte's chief daughter is killed by the sacred beast, so they declare an all-out war.
We continue the flashback in exploring the tragic past of the Sumerians and what led them to seek refuge on Earth. Through the eyes of Cross, we start to understand his reasons behind the lack of trust in other races and his fear in the reliance on hope for coexistence. The people of his planet had evolved into different tribes, each having their own customs, religion, and way of life. For instance, Cross and those with just a third eye are Lumalians, or likely pronounced Rumirians, who held the Kalyan beast in their planet to be sacred within their religion, whilst those with horns, i.e. Dabura, are from the Diskunte clan. who, along with the other tribes, saw the Kalyans as dangerous, wanting them to be all destroyed as they would attack and eat anyone other than the Rumerians, also they claimed. Even so, the Rumerian people protested, which led to the persecution and forceful push to barren lands by the stronger Deskunte clan. In fact, we learned that on this planet, every Simurian, no matter their tribe, is born with a third eye, a sacred organ that channels their life force known as Roruruka or Roruluka. Like, how do you pronounce this shit, bro? No, but basically, this is their version of cursed energy. Simurians cry from this eye only once at birth and when they die. Their third eye tears mark the beginning and end of life's flow, a spiritual echo of creation and loss. Hence why a tear produced by this third eye is incredibly dangerous for their brain and may cause death. However, with all that said, even though shedding tears from the third eye can lead to brain damage and death due to their reverence for the Kalyans, the Lumalians wept when they had been wiped out and killed, showcasing their deep connection to these beasts. The Deskuntans are pissed. They blame the Lumerians, saying it's their fault that the Kalyan attacked, and now they are demanding compensation. Which sounds not too bad, right? Until you realize they want 90% of the Lumerians' land, including the canal they just finished building. That's not compensation, that's colonization. It will literally leave thousands of Lumerians homeless overnight. But one of the elders speaks up saying, hold on, weren't all the Kalyan beasts exterminated from Deskunte lands years ago? So yeah, something seems off. It smells like a setup. And even if one survived, a Kalyan would never attack without being provoked by Lumerian, in which the Deskunte suggests they did. And just like that, boom, their entire civilization is blamed for something that makes zero sense. Moreover, Simuria chooses the political leaders and chief based on whoever possesses real strength. That's why the Deskuntans were always on top of the hierarchy. If you're strong enough to survive, you're strong enough to rule. And whenever two tribes disagree, the law is simple. There's a duel. We're talking about a literal fight to the death. And if the Deskuntans want to wage war, continuing their crusade to annex the Lumerian lands, they need to win. But our guys aren't scared. They're like, bet we might actually have a chance to defend ourselves because we have one man who can actually throw hands. The legend himself, Dura. This guy was winning duels before Maru and Cross were even born. He defeated the Deskunte war chief himself in the past, when every single odd was stacked against him. Bro wasn't just strong, he was built different. But when the Lumerians start celebrating, calling him the strongest man on the planet, Dura shakes his head and says, no, I'm not. Because he knows the truth. The real monsters of the Deskuntes never showed up to that old duel. The ones who didn't fight back then are the ones coming now, and for the first time he looks afraid. Cross questions if they can just refuse the duel, but Dura says no. Refusing a fight against the Deskunte won't change anything. They would just consider it a loss and proceed to take everything. Worse, the Deskuntans become complete monsters when their opponents refuse the ultimate purpose of a warrior, to fight to the death. So Dura does the unthinkable. He accepts the duel, knowing full well he's not coming out of this alive. But finally, the day of the duel arrived. The arena roars with excitement. The Deskuntans cheering, soldiers chanting, but the Lumerians, they're just silent, because the moment the Deskunte champion steps forward, their heart stops. It's Dabura. The audience reaction mirrors humanity's first sight of him in chapter 2. Pure fear. He isn't just a warrior, he's a calamity. A being so overwhelmingly strong that even Sukuna himself might have second thoughts. Alright, fine, I'm taking a piss and maybe I'm gassing him a bit too much. But he's strong. And here, Cross immediately realizes the truth. Dura might be powerful, but against this monster, he doesn't stand a chance. He pleads with him, run Dura, please, no one would blame you. But Dura just smiles. My guy was never leaving this arena alive, because the entire duel was a setup, a trap orchestrated by the Deskunte chief himself. As Dabura approaches, the two lock eyes. And instead Instead of hostility, there's heartbreak. Dura greets him not as an enemy, but as an old friend, almost like a brother. That's when the truth hits him. Dabura doesn't even want this fight. His sister's being held hostage by the Disconte chief. He's being forced to kill his own friend just to keep her alive. And that's when Dura collects everything together, seeing through the entire lie, and makes his move. First, he silently asks Dabura for a favor. Then, in front of the entire arena, Dura begins tearing down the Disconte's chief plans out loud. Word by word, he exposes their corruption. He shouts that his people's religion that separated them from the other tribes might have been a wall between them. However, the holy war that was waged against the Kalyans wasn't the true reason for the Disconte's invasion and their exile. The Discontins don't care about divine retribution, they only care about power. Because everything was for the Maru ores, a sacred mineral which stores Rurulka energy, and the Lumerians' lands are filled with it. This context makes the death of Maru and Cross's father and mother more tragic, because just before they died, their father was clutching onto this rock. He must have held it in such a high regard that he named one of his own child after it. And more than likely, these ores are linked back to the Kalyans, and this was the real reason for all of the carnage and war. Yep, you can't make this shit up. You all know what Gege was trying to refer from this, because this stuff is basically oil! And also think of it like when the US president in Jujutsu Kaisen found out about Gojo's existence. He didn't see a man, he saw a nuclear battery. That's exactly how the Discontins operate. Dora goes even further. He hints that the chief's daughter might have never even died at all. That her death was staged. Or worse, a sacrifice by their own empire, blamed on the Kalyans to give them an excuse for war. Basically a false flag attack, which of course Gege once again is trying to hint at our own world affairs. Come on, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Come on, I can't be the only ones. Like, I don't want to get demonetized. Dura pleads with the audience to see through the Discontins' lie, that recently their rise to power was due to the stolen ores. Dura explains that religion was meant to guide their lives, not twisted into a cultural weapon of war. The other tribes do not need to respect their religion, but rather respect their way of life, which is influenced by it. At the end of the day, everyone here is not so different. They are all living beings. So Dura once again asks for peace and friendship, begs the tribes to accept the Lumerians as neighbors. Regardless, it was for nothing, as one of the best characters in the sequel gets off-screened within a second. With one command from the chief, Dabura destroys Dura without even using his full power. This pisses the heck out of Maru. Cross literally had to pull the Garp and Sengoku moment here. However, Dabura explained that he held back because he didn't want to hurt his buddy's face. He's such a good guy, man. What could he have done? His sister is held hostage, so he had to kill his best friend, which I'm sure Dura was okay with. We then get a small hint about Dabura's backstory. Before the Lumerians were exiled, he and Dura grew up as warriors together. As a matter of fact, Dura was the only person who knew about Dabura's full power, as he didn't like showing off. That's why Dura knew from the start that he wasn't the strongest, and maybe even got lucky that Dabura wasn't in the previous duel, or he'd be dead before he even met the twins. But coming back to the chapter, we see the Lumerian holding Dura's funeral. Here, Cross reminisces about his time spent with Dura, who first coined the catchphrase to be neighbors. Is a companion who understands why things you treasure are important. With Dura's death, Cross concludes that being neighbors with the Discontins is impossible now, because Dura is what he and his brother had treasured above anything else. However, the Lumerian do not have the time to grieve. Dura lost the duel, and their lands are now to go to the Discontins by the next morning. The Lumerians have nowhere to go. Just then, Dabura arrives at their gathering with his sister, but he reveals what Dura had whispered to him at the arena. Remember the stones that Dura told the twins not to touch? Well, they were were actually Maru ores. Dura was not only building the canal for transport purposes, he was mining from there as well. Since that area was Kallion territory, no Deskunte would get close. So even after death, Dura had a plan of carrying the Lumerians. That's when Maru realizes that they can use these ores to rebuild their own civilization in another planet. That's right, it was Maru's idea all along. The whole thing about leaving the planet and finding a new race of people that would allow them to seek refuge and become peaceful neighbors with. Dura knew that after his death, the twins would carry out his legacy. However, these were no ordinary Maru ores, as Jabaloma realizes. It's something much more pure. Something so pure that it instantly elevated both Maru's and Cross's energy. Something that got them from using pickaxes and basic tools to a literal interstellar civilization in a matter of seconds. Getting in touch with Maru and Cross's Rorulka transformed these rocks into the literal mothership. I'm guessing it reacted to Maru's imagination, and as they have power to bend reality itself, they were able to transform the rocks into something that would deliver their goals. We continue the Jujutsu Kaisen sequel right after uncovering the tragic past of the Lumilians. A deep rift formed between the Sumerians and humans, respectively, leading each group to hold their own meeting to decide the next move. From the humans' point of view, they believe that the Sumerians have been given way too much freedom, especially since Cross rejected Usami's request to keep Maru on Earth to get treated. This act was a showcase of uncooperation. However, my guy Osami believes coexistence is possible, so he defends the aliens, even going so far to erase the footage of Berserk Maru clapping Tsurugi. But let's be honest, after feeling Dabura's power in chapter 2, you just don't want that smoke. So he states that both Yuka and Tsurugi were defeated and that the envoy Maru had no choice but to join in. However, here Osami channels its inner Higuruma and starts playing lawyer. And with an objection, why do I feel like an ace attorney? He rebuttals that there is no violation according to Hakari law. Yeah, this is the real thing. It's a rule in the Jujutsu regulations that permits sorcerers to hold commercial duels, which would often result in people gambling over it. So of course it had to be named after Hakari. This rule came into effect after Kenjaku exposed the Jujutsu sorcery to the world, and you know, the whole Culling Game incident and all, which effectively ended the Jujutsu regulation article number 8 of secrecy, since well, everything was out in the open. I mean, what do you tell the people when multiple nukes hit Shinjuku? So Osami makes Maru and the Okutsu siblings sign a document that puts them under contract with him. Infighting and battles between contractors poses no issue under the Hakari provision. However, this loophole has its limits, as now only bodyguards who are sorcerers recognized by the Jujutsu headquarters can enter commercial duels. But my guy Osami has come prepared to defend the earth against these idiots. He states that Maru is a potential sorcerer who is hired by Osami as his personal bodyguard. Regardless, after a bunch of back and forths between these higher ups, Osami gets to the point. Why are they trying to oppose the Sumerians? The smallest ambers can create the biggest fire in diplomacy. One mishap can lead to war. So instead of nitpicking on minor transgressions, Osami points out that they need to reveal their hand and what they hold. A power so great that Dabura would think twice before waging war. A strength that will make it very difficult for the Sumerians to overstep their welcome. The Jujutsu Council need to put every effort in locating humanity's very own deterrent, Yuji Itadori. However, it's not just the Earthlings struggling with the idea of peace. Even some of the Sumerians can't stomach it. Remember the dude that crossed laptop when he was just, 5? Yeah, his name is Oski. And he, after finally hitting the gym, thinks he earned a voice at the table. And so questions why Dabura, of all people, gets to make the final call. Especially when his people are the reason they are in this mess to begin with. That's when a new Lumilian elder steps in, explaining the unified council system they have adopted. Basically, certain individuals get more voting power than others. A system clearly based on strength, just like their planet's old custom. Both Maru and Cross are amongst the strongest, so their votes carry more weight. And they are the ones who backed Dabura's rise to leadership, giving him the power to veto the majority's vote. Yeah, it's basically the Sumerians' version of the UN, and Dabura is America with the veto button. Oski pretty much calls it a dictatorship. The elder then tries to make him understand that with Dura gone, Dabura is the only one who can act as the Sumerian chieftain. Being an outsider gives Dabura a detached, objective standpoint, allowing him to make decisions that can benefit them all without emotions getting involved. But this guy still hasn't forgiven Cross for that right hook. However, since they leveled up even more, he can't do shit, as the elder puts it straight to him. Forget Dabura, can you even beat the twins? In his annoyance, his old friend tried to calm him down, explaining that Dabura as ruler can only veto 2 times per debate. Since their entire council knows that Maru had been injured, the majority will once again vote for conflict. Until now, Dabura has been following his best friend's ideology to find neighbors and build healthy relationship by understanding each other. However, this brawnhead is having none of it. He believes that acting submissively will just cause a repeat of their past traumas. He sees Japan as a weak nation with no standing army, and hence should just be taken over. This is exactly why Usomi wants to find Yuji Itadori, so bums like him can learn their place. The old man once again tries to be the voice of reason within the faction of those who want a more forceful relocation. He suggests that they should push for an autonomous region within Tokyo to migrate to, whilst Oski doubles down and says to achieve this, conflict should not be thrown out of the table. It is time for the Lumas to become the Duskunte and take what they want, or else they'll always be the ones who loses the most. This was something that even Cross had mentioned to Yuka in chapter 7. Speaking of, before the voting takes place, Cross confronts Jabaloma on why for the past councils he had abstained from his voting regarding the question of coexistence with the Earthlings. But my loopy-eared Tengen-looking uncle Uno reverses the question to then tell him that he will just copy Cross's answer. Unlike the other members of the council, Cross has the power of 10 votes, and together with Jabaloma, they can overturn any consensus. So he had entrusted his own vote to him, holding him in high regard. Cross is baffled and so questions why Jabaloma does not have a will of his own. But as we saw in the flashback, this guru has ascended into nirvana and started spitting some scripture. My boy, relinquishing your will is also an act of willpower. Honestly, this guy's a G. As these guys make their vote, Cross thinks back to his time on Earth and on Tsurugi's words, on the lost boy, on the will of the dying Yuka, who wants to break the cycle of hatred. Finally, on Dura and his message for peace. With that, the time has come for the result. Yep, a drum roll, please. Coexistence! Yeah, Cross and Jabaloma both voted for peace, revealing that Yuka's words did reach his heart at the end of chapter 7. But this does not sit right with all of the other Sumerians, as Oski argues against this decision. He really wants conflict. My guy just wants to go in there and just claim his home. He wants to just straight up kick out the Japanese from their house and say, I have suffered under the boots of the Disconte, and now I need to channel Theodore Herzl and say God.
What the hell are you talking about?
Oski even tries to invalidate the final consensus since Maru's not present there. But Jabaloma and Cross represents him and saying that Maru had sided with coexistence from the start. But watch him take this decision in his own hands and screw everything up for both parties. There's always that one guy, and when he hopes that Dabura would side with him, he says no. Dabura states that they can invade at any time if they need to after a major disagreement with the humans break out, but once that happens, there's no going back. He even reminds them that they left Simuria in search of neighbors, so it's just better to get to know each other first. We then go back to Earth, where both parties hold a meeting. The aliens explain their situation to the humans and the reason they were exiled. However, Usami had to put 2 and 2 together to reach the conclusion that Dabura could have been the one who had defeated them in the first place. He's really got PTSD from chapter 2 that he can't fathom Dabra being defeated. And so, after a brief introduction to the Lumalians' belief of the Kallians, Usami proposes to host a dinner between the Earthlings and the aliens. This would give them the opportunity to build better relationships, which is the perfect idea to start getting along with each other. A dinner with both parties will help them learn each other's cultural differences, where they can both come to a neutral agreement. So Jabaloma sends Cross and Maru to make the preparations, whilst Usami asks for Yuka and Tsurugi. With the decision to have a takoyaki feast, preparations have started for Japan and the Sumerians to come together for a dinner party.
What happened to the original plot of the movie?
The chapter starts with the Lumalians revealing the truth about their mothership, that the entire thing runs on Rurulka energy, the aliens' version of cursed energy. Now, although this decision of revealing their cards to the humans might seem to look like a front of peace, it causes more problems than before. Usami believes humans can also reach this level of technology if they could efficiently convert cursed energy into fuel, which would in turn kickstart an energy revolution. Currently, it seems many nations are already invested in this research, but the conversion is too low for practical uses. However, the special Maru or Mul ores from Simuria has the innate property to convert Rurulka into all forms of energy. This would likely work with the humans' curse energy as well. In a way, it seems as though these ores were able to manifest the dream and ideas of those imbued with their energy. Like, no way did Maru have the intricate knowledge of how a spaceship operates. All he did was dream, wishing to find a new place to immigrate to, a place far away from their home planet. With a poof, these rocks heard his calls and delivered a means for him to achieve his goals. So, if the world learns about the mothership and the ores, an opportunity would arise for many countries to make their way up the world hierarchy. Sorcerers and curse users will become valuable commodities and a huge target. Usami believes that unless the rest of the world sorts out their internal corruption, this entire situation has to be kept a secret. And for that, he proposes the aliens sign an NDA. Mino then suggests a good alternative. I can't lie, man, he is pretty smart. He says, why don't we just hitch them up? An alien and a human. That would be perfect. You know it can work, yeah? Yuka and Cross make a good couple. But he gets shut down. Instead, Usami, using his 200 IQ, suggests that earning a favor from the aliens would go a long way. And we soon come to learn how he plans to get Dabra on their side. But for now, the cultural exchange party between the Sumerians and the Japanese is about to begin. The core group is split into two teams. Tsurugi and Maru are kept in charge of finding the octopus for the takopi dinner, whilst Yuka and Cross stay behind for the preparation. During this time, Cross questions Yuka. Why on earth is she hiding her problems from her brother? You know, that one where she has only 6 months left to live? Where she has a huge tumor in her brain? Isn't that something you let your family know about? However, Yuka doesn't want the people around her to change and pity her. She wants her final days to be as normal as ever. Regardless, Maru and Tsurugi go fishing for the one-legged giant octopus, which is considered to be tastier than normal octopus. Since being sorcerers, it will be a piece of cake to obtain them. After some friendly competition which ends in a draw, Tsurugi questions what's the meaning to be a warrior for a Lumerian. Maru then explains that it's exactly the same as being a sorcerer to the Japanese. However, for the Lumerians, only men can become sorcerers.
And I sat there and I thought, how are women allowed to drive?
No, it's not some prejudice type of thing. Lumerian women cannot control Rurulka energy. Their forefathers told them that everything was given by God, who had then sent Kallians to be revered, and had then bestowed them the ability to use Rurulka in the first place. It's the duty and privilege of the men, who cannot bear children, to protect their women and kids. Tsurugi points out that this system is much like our own olden time and Japan's Reiwa era, where women were meant to just give birth and care for for children, whilst men are considered protectors and warriors. In turn, the value system of their people becomes dependent on something they cannot control, as women who cannot give birth and men who cannot control cursed energy would be looked down upon. But Maru shuts this thought process down, stating the value of each person is not inherently linked to this, rather their value is what good they can provide for their people as a whole. It doesn't matter if they are a male or a female, a warrior or not. Maru gives Jabaloma as an example, who isn't the strongest, but is valued highly in their society due to his wisdom. The inherent trait of an individual does not per se give them value, rather it gives them responsibility. Gege once again is trying to portray different cultures and religions of our world, giving a deeper insight, as some ideologies can be seen as backwards to others, but when looked at holistically, it may appear different. However, no doubt this can lead to a disparity of some privileges. Maru points out that not having the control over energy means that their females are less safe, and hence are not allowed to leave the ship due to the potential dangers they might face. Maru doesn't know if this is just them being overprotective or perhaps patriarchal, and felt guilty thinking how they must have felt caged within the ship. So he was happy to learn that the females would be allowed to attend the cultural exchange. Relating to this, Tsurugi starts remembering the time he'd go and protect his younger sister Yuka. Now, although he's much stronger than her, even slapping her up in chapter 1, he didn't believe she is inherently weak. In reality, they are just scared that their loved ones could get hurt, which makes them overprotective. So Tsurugi ends up questioning which one of them is truly weak in that situation. However, considering that the Lumas were oppressed by the Duskuntes, whose woman Maru implies can use curse energy, or Roluka, would then make the Lumerian men even more overprotective. Sadly, traumas don't just vanish overnight. But we come to the long-awaited cultural exchange, and just then, Jabaloma requests assistance from Usami and his team, giving the humans an opportunity to be owed a favor like Usami wanted. Dabura's sister has been cursed by the Duskuntan's chief. Although they may be out of the curse's effective range, the Sumerians cannot be certain that the curse won't be effective. The trigger to this curse is Dabura's betrayal to the patriarchy, or if the chieftain dies. He did this so that Dabura doesn't have a choice but to win in the duel against Dura. So they are hoping the humans have the answer to this. And yes, they do. Remember when Gojo was sealed? Tengen gave multiple options to the sorcerers to unseal him. Although they went along with getting Hanakurusu's help, another option was the Black Rope. This is a curse tool that was used and created by Miguel's clan in Africa, and has the ability to remove any curse that exists. Regardless, with Usami giving the aliens an assurance, Dabura takes his leave. Man just wanted to use the toilet, right?
냄새... disgusting한 냄새가 나요.
But on his way, he bumps into Yuka and the chef who made their food. And guess what, guys? Dabura's insane aura rizzed up the chef. Literally, the spark they have catches everyone's eyes, and Usami actually starts thinking Mino's plan to marry the two sides together might work. I still think Yuka and Cross can work.
Huh?
But now with this going all good, the next stop is the Sumerians' turn to host their side of the exchange, possibly even getting the humans on their ship. But talking about the mothership, the situation is different there. People who were against the peace between the two races, like Oski, stayed behind. And that's when things started getting worse. Remember this old geezer who was also against the peace treaty? Well, he apparently saw a human murdering a Kalyan. So to clarify the matter, Jabaloma, the spokesperson for the Lumalians, reaches out to Usami, confirming the connection between cursed spirits with the Kalyans. Because these tears don't just leak out for fun. No. This eye liquid is actually brain juice. The Lumalians only cry like this when they are born, when they die, or when they witness the death of Kalyans, which can lead to their brains imploding. But what convinced Usami and Mino was the fact the old man saw this happening in Tokyo. We learned that after 68 years from Gojo and Sukuna's death, 99% of cursed spirits now only manifest in this city, making the old capital of Japan a place where ordinary humans can never venture into, the realm of the cursed spirits, Tokyo, the inhuman Makyo. We quickly learn more about this as the Okutsu siblings take Maru on a tour alongside Kyoto's protective barriers. Yuka explains after the Culling Games, when the world learned about cursed spirits, the government but lied, saying that they only appear in Tokyo, and by limiting the leakage of curse energy to Tokyo, where the public have no access to, made this lie into a truth. People were actually scared of Tokyo. Considering what happened in Shinjuku, it only makes sense. But this resulted in even more curses spawning in the old capital. However, barriers were constructed around Kyoto and other regions, since it's not impossible for cursed spirits to form outside of Tokyo. This in turn pushes the curses away from those regions into the controlled zone. And that's when Tsurugi talks about the Great Purification Ritual, an actual culling of cursed spirits. To ensure they don't spill out of Tokyo, sorcerers are sent once in a while to exterminate them. Sounds simple, right? I mean, they even make a game out of it. However, in the eyes of the Sumerians, this goes against their religion, as they see cursed spirits in the same light as the Kalyons, and that's what this old Sumerian had witnessed. He stumbled upon Tokyo whilst the Great Purification was taking place. Whilst exorcising the cursed spirits in Tokyo, they proceed to start cleansing indoors. However, something or someone was pulling all the cursed spirits to a single room, and that is none other than Oski.
Who?
Come on, guys. The Sumerian who wanted conflict and voted to overtake Japan by force. After hearing what happened from Elder Boro, he made his way there to confirm the existence of their gods on Earth. And so, this geezer is literally treating the cursed spirits like a freaking pet. Now, it does look kind of dodgy, I can't lie. It's a bit sus. But regardless of what's happening between these two, they are rudely interrupted by the sorcerers. This is where the situation starts getting even worse. Osami immediately sends words to the sorcerers in Tokyo to stop the purification ritual. Both Jabaloma and Cross also realizes how bad the situation can get, and so they decide to tag along. Cross even offers to use their mothership to reach there as soon as possible. At the same time, back in Kyoto, the siblings explain cursed objects to Maru. Like Sukuna's fingers, they are used to repel the cursed spirits, but over time, the nature of these objects change, where they will start attracting them instead. So a Jujutsu sorcerer's job is not only to deal with the rogue curse users and protect others from cursed spirits, but also to make sure these protective charms are still working well enough for cursed spirits to be repelled. Tsurugi then tries to relate their job back with the Sumerians, but Maru says the role of their warriors are different. Their warrior path is chosen from birth by the Kalyans of their villages, who are 1,000-year-old creatures that decides what path a Lumerian will lead in life at the time of their birth. That's one of the reasons they are considered gods amongst them, to a point that the Lumelians' middle names are also given by the Kalyans. However, whilst the trio are just chilling and exchanging cultural ideals with one another, the situation in Tokyo becomes even dire. Usami, Jabaloma, and Cross arrive at the old capital, but it's too late. The worst has happened. The buzz haircut guy, Yakomaru, one-shots the cursed spirit who was sucking off Oski, and so he gets attacked by him, forcing them to retreat outside the building. The war is beginning. But before things can escalate any further, Osami contacts every sorcerer to assemble at once. He even had to use his cursed speech to stop them at their position. Osami explains that the Great Purification has officially been called off because the Sumerians were never properly briefed about cursed spirits and were only given limited intel about Jujutsu sorcery, meaning the main blame for this whole situation kind of falls on them. To make matters worse, Osami confirms that the cursed spirits resemble the Kalyans, which is exactly why the Sumerians are freaking out and accusing humanity of killing their gods. However, whilst Osami is trying to calm down the sorcerers, Cross does the same to his own people. He explains that the Kalyans and the cursed spirits are not the same thing. Even though Oski points to his eyes saying it's tearing up, Cross responds back that if they were truly Kalyans, he would barely be standing on his feet. Rather, he should have dropped into an aneurysm. On top of that, cursed spirits do not have a physical body like the Kalyans, so after they are exorcised, they simply disappear. Cross even starts begging Oski to use the little brain cells he has and to hold it together. With the situation kinda calmed down, both parties' representatives apologizes to each other, hoping to reaffirm their peaceful negotiations. And so, whilst things are seemingly calming down in Tokyo, the trio wind up the mission of checking every barrier down at Kyoto. Here we get a warm yet eerie feeling. You know, the one you get before everything turns to shit? Yep, Yuka tells Maru that Jujutsu sorcerers are always short-staffed, so the Simurian's warriors can help out with checking the barriers along with the Great Purification. They can be such a big help to them and they will all get along. It will be such a great party, unknown to the current situation going on in Tokyo. They even say the goodbyes, promising to meet the next day. However, we all know Gege, right? This might be the last time they meet as friends, as Gege has started cooking the next war. Because back in Tokyo, Cross starts reaching. He starts reaching, guys. He reaches in his coat pockets, alright? And at that point, Yokomaru channels his blue uniform and starts blazing his gun, shooting Cross in the chest and gut. Now, obviously, he was reaching for a weapon, right? It was the only rational thing to do. It's nothing to do with racism or fear of seeing someone different, right? Stupid ass. Seriously, did he really think the guy who was responsible to calm the situation down is going to be pulling out a weapon? And so, in self-defense, he shoots him? Come on, they shut up. Gege, man, what are you doing here, man? He's watching too much American news.
Modulo chapter 13 begins with Cross being on life support, and the Simurians are surrounding him in complete disbelief. Maru loves his brother and doesn't understand why they would think Cross was reaching for his sword, which the others completely deny. Cross had a change of heart and was following the path of Maru for coexistence. I mean, he did vote on the council to not start a war, which Dabura followed since he trusted him. Osuki then claims that if Cross truly wanted a fight, then the weak sorcerers that were there wouldn't have stood a chance against him. And to be honest, he isn't wrong. We know Maru has a technique that can be classified as special grade since he breaks the laws of physics by changing inertia in anything. Jabaloma then claims that Cross was truly looking for the best path for the Lumerians, just like his sensei taught him to in the past. After all, he did agree with Yuka to break the cycle of violence. And whilst Cross is breathing his last breath, Sugiri is just finding out about Usami. Similarly, he's also at death's door. Reverse curse technique from this kid, it isn't doing enough to fix the damage he received from Dabura. Now, as a community, we all wondered if Dabura truly is in the ranks of Gojo or Sukuna, but the characters keep upscaling his power, pretty much confirming it every time. They then describe that Dabura's power cannot be measured in the grading system. He's like a calamity, much like Sukuna. Remember that a calamity was described to be a sorcerer that has no limits, with overwhelming aggression that disregards all else. Which makes sense of chapter 2 when Jabaloma said there's no point disarming Dabura. Even Cross stated that humans have no chance to win if this goes to war because they have the special grade on their side. We then witness this epic moment of Dabura arriving at the scene of Cross getting shot. His presence alone paralyzes the sorcerers. His curse energy pressure is overwhelming, but as he farms aura like nobody's business, Dabura's comrades tell him that the cursed spirits resemble Kalians, which is what created the confusion in the first place. In response, this idiot who shot Cross screams that this isn't the deities that they worship, it's just cursed spirits, leading to this sick ass panel of him shitting bricks. It literally feels like he's aging on the spot from fear, much like what happened to Welfin when he was in front of Miriam and begged for his life in Hunter x Hunter. Now, just as he's about to die, Usami jumps in with cursed speech telling Dabura don't move. And this is Usami's greatest mistake, because this dude's arm literally gets ripped to shreds. In fact, it disappears from existence. We don't even see it fall to the floor, and it's a clean cut too, with the bone and muscle still intact of what's left. Keep in mind, Usami is a grade 1 sorcerer, but receives the kickback so powerful that it puts him to the floor and destroys his entire throat and body, immobilizing him. Don't move isn't even a strong command to cast, which Usami confirms in the chapter. It's not like he's saying get crushed, explode, get twisted like Uzumaki has done to weaker opponents. He then turns to Usami, the minister who is responsible for maintaining order between nations, right? But he laments that, bro, it looks like you're suffering. The more he moves, ignoring his technique, the bigger the backlash is, which explains why this dude ends up in a coma. Now, with no other choice, and genuinely one of my favorite characters in the sequel so far, he does the right thing. He offers his deepest apologies and to forgive them for their rude behavior. He begs Dabura to give them another chance to talk things out peacefully and asks them to withdraw for now. And the paneling is mwah. This illustrator that Gege picked, he's doing a fantastic job because everything is fire. It's very metaphoric. We see all the human sorcerers witnessing their minister bowing down to Dabura in complete dogeze. Now, for us cultured folk, we know dogeza is used to show extreme apology and to make a significant request in Japan. And as a result, Dabura states a payment is required for cross, claiming that there is 13 humans here right now, and he will kill all of them to make it even. However, Usami requests to kill him instead, and this selflessness reminds Dabura of his best friend Dura, who similarly made a speech before their duel about coexistence and how violence should be avoided. So with the current situation between Japan and the Simurians at an all-time low, they ask for the immediate cease of the purge, meaning to stop the killing of cursed spirits. This is literally what the special grade curses like Jogo and Hanami were fighting for. But just imagine, how can humans survive whilst curses still exist? The natural order of things will completely get messed up. And this has been made very clear by this girl who is grade 1 with the ponytail. She states that curses will start spilling out of Tokyo if the humans stop constantly purging them now and again. Now, basic cursed spirits won't be too much of an issue, but if it starts going to grade 2 and above, humanity might not stand a chance. Cause remember, Jujutsu sorcerers are very short-handed and can't be everywhere at the same time to protect the country. So for an entire month, the Japanese have been carrying secret exorcisms in the night so that Lemurians don't find out. However, they're not born yesterday and they have a special communication method. At their base, Osuki concentrates his awareness straight onto Japan and finds out the truth anyway. Cursed spirits or Kalians, to them, they are still being massacred, right? And now that the Sumerians have found out what the humans have been doing in secret for the last month, they send out an official statement condemning the atrocities of the Japanese government, whilst they issue their side of the story, stating that their hands are tied. Osuki then continues to suffer, listening to the cries of the cursed spirits, since as a Lemurian warrior, he believes that this is the least he can do. Even Dabura comes in to calm things down, but Osuki shuts him up as well. He reminds Dabura that he's a diskunte, so even he can't begin to understand the pain he's going through. So with Dabura being reminded about his origins, he decides to do things the diskunte way. Essentially, in this new proposal, the Japanese have to give up Tokyo to the aliens so that they can create their own country, the Republic of Lumiere. However, if the Japanese do not submit to this request, the outcome would be a diskunte style duel. Yep, literally the same one that forced Dabura to kill his best friend. So the humans are absolutely cooked. Which brings us to our goal, my man, Yuji Itadori. Nobara Kugisaki is still alive and makes her return. And according to her, our MC doesn't age anymore. This is because of his unique physiology as a human and cursed. This is a direct consequence of his origins, birthed as the perfect vessel with immense strength by Kenjaku. But eventually, Yuji consumed his half-cursed spirit brothers to gain strength to kill Sukuna, and he became closer to a cursed object soaked in energy, according to Shoko. Now remember, this also gave him blood manipulation and learning reverse curse technique in only a month. However, Yuji would stay in his prime to this day, knowing that he would outlive everyone. burying all his loved ones again and again. And in the meantime, he has so much responsibility to kill curses, destroying Culling Game players like the old man from chapter 5, and even joining in on the great purification ritual to cleanse evil spirits in Tokyo. At the end, he was treated as a weapon just like his sensei. And mind you, he even had to help maintain barriers and all the politics that comes with being a sorcerer, since Japan became the head of supernatural activity as stated in chapter 1 for the whole goddamn world. So to keep it simple, Yuji was juggling a lot on his plate, and then things got even worse. Like, I believe Gege is cooking an absolute masterpiece with Yuji's character development because it follows everything perfectly from part 1. Remember that Yuji's entire arc was about dying surrounded by loved ones, a message his grandfather left him before he passed away, to not end up lonely like him. On top of that, Yuji was discovering the meaning of a proper death. That's why in chapter 13 of the sequel, Nobara mentions that Yuji talked about his granddad's last wish, but it can't come true. All of that is denied now, and it has become a curse, thanks to his slow aging, right? I mean, Choso was easily over 150 years old. Also, at the very start of Jujutsu Kaisen, Yuji pondered the difference between the death he's facing and his grandpa's, claiming he died peacefully and that curses do not give humans a natural death. And after killing his first human, he asks Nanami what is a proper death, as he always thinks to give his opponents a genuine one. Then later on in the story as it developed, Todo taught Yuji that being a Jujutsu sorcerer means to endure punishment. Looking for meaning or logic in his friend's death can defile the memories of those we've lost. So throughout the story, Yuji claims to take the share of everyone that suffered on his watch, cursing himself even further. However, how can Yuji be a broken man that is traumatized in the sequel now? I mean, this is the same person that Sukuna confirmed in chapter 248 that Yuji has an unbreakable human spirit and has the most powerful soul. This only highlights that whatever happened in the last 68 years, it crushed Yuji to the point where he's gone into hiding, as Nobara claims he's traumatized. This resulted in him straying away from the sorcerer life and leaving it all behind. I mean, we were told by Nanami and Gojo that being a sorcerer is depressing and will drive you insane. So doing it for over 6 decades, it would take its toll. So Yuji's character arc in the sequel now is about finding the courage to open himself up, reconnect with humanity, and choose to live with whatever time he has left with the people he loves. Not in fear, but in resolve, moving forward no matter what. However, there's one last thing Nobara indirectly confirms. Yuji is still a special grade in his prime with the title of strongest. He is muscular and more serious than ever. This is why the sorcerers in chapter 13 are still trying to find him. He is the deterrent nuke to the aliens. He is the one they want to choose as their champion to fight Dabura in the duel that they request. Now, since they can't find Yuji, the next best pick for humanity is Yuka. No, I know what to... Alright, we're cooked, aren't we? We're cooked. No, I'm joking. Now, when I looked at this panel, I thought Yuta revived. Like, look at these panels side by side when Yuta promised to kill Kinjaku in parallel to Yuka stating the same thing. They're giving the same expression. Those genes are strong. Therefore, Miyaguni and the others discuss Yuka's condition. They all find out that she's going to die in 3 months due to illness. However, the weapons held by the defense forces and military, they can't stand up to Dabura. So all of those soldiers and sorcerers fighting, it will only lead to meaningless death. This leads the sorcerers to nuclear, but rightly so. Miyaguni states no country would want to take on a stigma of dropping yet another one on Japan. So they state if Japan wants to do that to themselves, well, they can produce the nuke and see what happens. Now you're probably wondering, why are nukes even being mentioned to power scale the characters? Well, it was already established in chapter 6 of the original manga. A grade 2 has a close call with a shotgun, grade 1 even a tank might be insufficient, but for special grades, cluster bombs might work. However, considering that Kenjaku stated that a special grade is able to wipe out an entire country with one hand tied behind your back, I guess comparing Yuji and Dabra, who are now calamities, to a nuke, that makes perfect sense. Even Gojo's hollow purple against Sukuna was like a mini one, and even then it didn't vaporize them from existence. And let's not forget Sukuna's furnace that Yuji survived. It was compared to thermobaric explosives that kill all living things. Now chapter 14 isn't done cooking and being peaked because it drops another bombshell. It is a perfect example of how the story keeps flipping our expectations. Dabra and Jabaloma, they initially looked hostile. We all thought they were villains. We judged them based on their appearance. But guess what? They're the ones trying to avoid war, right? And now the twins get the same treatment. We all assumed Cross was the evil emotional hothead and Maru was the level-headed one that wanted peace. But it turns out it's the complete opposite. Maru is the aggressive twin, whilst Cross is sensitive and the real crybaby. Suddenly, it makes complete sense why Maru was the first to attack in the flashback. He tried to fight Dabra for holding back against Dola, as he hurt his pride in his duty to be a warrior. Now in chapter 14, we witness Maru completely break down when he sees Cross's condition. He hasn't spoken honestly with his brother in so long and it hurts. And now he's confronted with the possibility that he might lose him forever. That's when we get the flashback the moment the twins discovered the special Muru stone that their father left behind. But Maru, he shatters it. He finally admits to himself that it was just an ordinary rock. Their father died protecting a fantasy, and Maru realizes he's been living in that same delusion. He puts all the blame on these stones, and here's the tragedy. Maru is becoming exactly like his father. He didn't want Cross to know the truth about the stone, so he lied to protect him. And now, looking at Cross injured because of the decisions he made, Maru realizes his duty as a warrior is just another obsession that causes harm. That's why he wants to apologize, because for the first time, Maru sees the cycle that Cross and Yuka talked about in the past chapters that they want to break. But the scene then cuts to Sugiri, who thinks the alien Sumerians arriving on Earth is a little sus and ain't adding up. Sugiri finds it hard to believe that they could develop high-level science or interstellar engineering based on how this society works. There's no way primitive people like them built the spaceship, yet they arrived in a vessel far beyond human technology, which means someone else must have created it. The ship is powered by cursed energy, but even if they somehow had the intelligence or resources, they simply didn't have the time to create something this advanced. So Sugiri concludes that there must have been an irregular event, and that happens to be Maru. The spaceship is made of the special ore, but it doesn't just react to cursed energy but also techniques. That's how busted Maru and Cross were. There's no one in the history of sorcery that can create an intergalactic spaceship that can travel space like this and carry 50k people. I'm just saying, their technique must be absolutely insane. Now the only reason the ship could function was because Dola left behind exceptionally pure Muru, something far superior to the ordinary that the Discunte use. Sugiri then realizes another crucial point. The alien's ability to speak Japanese, track his location, and understand human concepts isn't natural. It's a cursed technique. Maru then confirms it's his ability. He didn't stumble upon Sugiri by luck. He located him needing one last conversation. Sugiri then takes a stance for humanity, asking Maru to leave the planet with the 50,000 refugees. But Maru says, bro, that's impossible. You really think I could do that right now when we've discovered that Kallians exist on this planet? We want to stay here, right? So he informs Sugiri that Yuka fighting Dabura is pointless. She should forfeit. But Yuka wants to sacrifice herself doing something good for humanity rather than dying to an illness. She will activate a binding vow to increase her power, and Maru assumes even that would be useless. Yuka actually has the 10 shadows technique, which means Mahoraga will return.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
He tells Maru to leave Earth, and Maru hits him back with alien history saying, nah bro, that ain't gonna happen. It took us 2 years to find a habitable planet. Their technique burnt out in the process, and they drifted terrified through space. And Gege, bruh, he pulls out one of the most beautiful illustrations of their ship, reduced to a tiny speck against the infinite void. This tells us that Simurians don't have another choice. They can't waste all that suffering. They can't let 50,000 people lives die for vain and in the darkness of nothing. Then Sugiri, he pulls out his sword like an absolute menace and basically says, my bad, what I meant was, get the hell out of here, ya bitch. And at the same moment, Maru says he has a duty as a warrior. And that's when the meaning of this scene hits even harder, because as these two former friends prepare to clash, the plane carrying Yuka to fight Dabura, it flies overhead between them. It's absolutely peak storytelling. Yuka has only a few months left to live. The tumor in her brain is getting worse than ever, and she's fully aware of what this means. She's walking into this battle knowing she probably isn't coming back. So instead of fear, Yuka starts reminiscing about life and about her brother. She admits something painful. She never thought Sugiri was the best big brother, but in her next life, she hopes she can be the older sibling. She imagines holding back when they fight, letting him have snacks, helping him study, teaching him tricks, all the small ordinary things she never got to do. But this is where tragedy strikes even harder. Yuka doesn't dream of power or glory. She dreams of a normal sibling relationship that she'll never have. And then her condition gets worse. Her vision goes from blurry to darkness, and she's losing consciousness, not aware of the person even in front of her. Her mind starts slipping and she mistakes Mino for Sugiri, but he sees through it immediately. He realizes that Yuka's I'm fine act is just a strong persona that she's putting on. Her illness has progressed too far, and all he can do is grab her hand and say sorry. That single moment unlocks a memory. Yuka remembers the truth that she kept buried. Sugiri was never a bad brother. He was protective, sacrificed constantly, and endured pain for her. We see him bloody, saving her from a curse that would have killed her, on top of saving her friend and never even blaming her once. He took every burden onto himself because he believed that's what an older brother does. This is where the chapter becomes absolute peak. We finally see both sides of the sibling relationship that started this story from chapter 1 in the first place. Their squabble over Rika's ring. They both hide their love behind distance and sarcasm, but deep down, they care more about each other than anyone else. But whilst all of this is happening, Dabura meets an old face. It's Ui, and he's got this weird looking build, like bro's wide as hell, he's got a hunchback and all. I mean, comparing this to old Nobara, she aged like a fine wine and kept her beauty just like she always wanted, I'm just saying. Dabura then asks if he's the chosen warrior, but he is here to greet him as a representative of Earth's sorcerers. Bro glazes his sister so much, he took on Mei's hairstyle and was sent her crows to spectate everything for a purpose. Just how against Sukuna, Mei would broadcast to the world the biggest fight in history. The same thing is happening again right now. But then, Ui gives Dabura a crash course on sorcery and its history. This loops us back to one of Jujutsu Kaisen's message and the tragic idea about the higher you climb, climb, the more alone you become. Remember that Gojo explained this best with his words about flowers. To Gojo, strong people are like flowers blooming at the top of a mountain. They're beautiful, powerful, and admired from afar, but no one actually stands beside them. Now eventually, Ui reveals his grandchildren, stating that they have never seen the pinnacle of violence a human can reach. Like, bro, he's seriously saying he wants his kids to witness a nuke go off. Like, bro, did this guy not watch Oppenheimer? As a result, he wants Dabra to show them the pinnacle of a good fight. Remember that in the sequel, we learned that sorcerers of the modern age are getting weaker and weaker. So Ui feels like for this generation to be inspired, they need to see what the strongest actually means to increase the standard. However, Dabra claims he cannot show a good fight if the opponent is gonna get one shot. He's never faced a sorcerer ever in his life that can last long enough for him to go all out, which basically parallels Gojo and Sukuna once again. But either way, Ui backs up Yuka, stating Dabra's loneliness will be satisfied. And what's interesting is that all of them have a similar breaking point. Gojo lost Geto, Yuji lost his best friends, and Dabra lost Dura. But another thing you must notice is that the duel is occurring at the very same spot where Sukuna used Divine Flame and Gojo's purple nuking the area. The scars of the Battle of Strongest aren't healed even 70 years later. So for the current generation, Gojo's era is being viewed the same way Kinjaku saw the golden era of sorcerers in the Heian era. And this is just Gege's way of highlighting once again the cyclic nature of life, which is why there has to be someone to break that cycle in each generation. This time it being Yuka trying with Cross. And speaking of which, she has reached a destination and launches herself from the plane. Yuka cries as she remembers Sugiri, wishing to be his younger sister again when they get reincarnated. And on the way down, the aura farming is glorious. She apologizes to Dabra and finally calls out Mahoraga. However, she still hasn't tamed Mahoraga yet. That's why its first attempt is to kill Yuka, but she escapes into the shadows. This means the ritual has been activated, binding all three of them on the battlefield. And for the first time, we see Dabra's curse technique. And my guy, he is absolutely busted. He wastes no time and tries to one-shot Mahoraga with his ability. And it's a technique that cannot be pronounced by earthlings. It's literally called blank and light. It is an ancient technique that is passed down through generations of Diskunte that brings their slaughter instincts in the form of mass and light. This now explains how Dabra ripped off that dude's arm instantly, leaving nothing behind. Mass is energy that's being condensed. Mass is why punches hurt, why planets bend space, and why black holes are terrifying. Their mass taken to the extreme. So what the Diskunte technique does is insane. It forces light to behave as mass. So instead of light passing through you, it collapses, it gains density, and manifests as a concentrated slab of destructive force. And using this, he instantly one-shots Mahoraga, pulling these slabs of light through his body multiple times. However, guess what? The general tanks it like a beast, as we get confirmation that for the first time, his adaptation process has begun against an extraterrestrial being. It has already begun spinning once, and that's where chapter 16 begins. The Jujutsu Kaisen sequel opens up by revealing what truly happened to the 10 Shadows technique 68 years later. After the Culling Game, Yuta became the head of the Gojo clan, whilst Megumi became the head of the Zeni. The big three clans are called former because remember, Gojo killed all the crop leaders before fighting Sukuna, and Gaku Ganji inherited a will to reform Sorcerer Society. But of course, as decades pass, politics still have a role to play, where the Gojo clan decided the 10 Shadows should be forbidden. Yuka is only permitted to use some of the Shikigami abilities without summoning them. Now you're probably thinking, ABD, why would they make such a decision? Well, After the Culling Game, the sorcerer world saw what 10 shadows could really do and deem it too dangerous. If Mahoraga can adapt to limitless, then the 6 eyes is no longer the power ceiling for sorcery, and that changes everything politically, because once the world believes 6 eyes limitless can be beaten, the Gojo clan loses the one thing that kept everyone in line: fear and respect. So in all of history before Sukuna, nobody ever truly tamed Mahoraga. Every 10 shadow user can't control it like a pet, they can only release it, which means Mahoraga was basically used like a guaranteed self-destructive move. You summon it in an exorcism ritual, it kills the target, but it also kills you, and usually everyone nearby. So over decades, as sorcerers got weaker, that problem only got worse, because if people are weaker, then nobody can stop the 110 shadow user who panics and pulls the trigger. Just look at Megumi, he was pulling that trigger every other moment. So now the technique is banned. But the bad news gets even worse. But the fight between Mahoraga and Dabura continues. The wheel has already spun once from the first light and mass attack sent. We literally notice a detail of Raga buying the attack like nothing after regenerating. So the clock is ticking faster than usual. Only 3 to 4 spins remain for Mahoraga's victory as adaptation will complete. Dabura is of course shocked. He's never seen anyone survive his attack before. Mahoraga then counters with a strike and sends him flying with a kick. But using the buildings, Dabura uses one hand to slow down momentum, destroying all of it. But we can see Raga already blitzing underneath him. He catches on and uses his light mass attack like a bloody Kamehameha. This rips off Mahoraga's arms off, but the wheel spins once more. Remember, if he's hit by the same attack additional times, the process is sped up each time and lowering the damage. His arms regenerate instantly, but Dabura, having such immense strength, he throws an entire ass building with one hand. Raga uses all his might to catch it, looking like a bloody Dragon Ball Z character with how buff his arm is. Now, as it breaks into pieces, Dabura starts figuring out what adaptation actually is. Shikigami are an exclusive technique to Earth sorcerers. There's none that Dabura has come across before on the Sumerian planet. They then farm aura like nobody's business, staring each other down. But this is where Dabura basically confirms he is a calamity special grade even further. JJK's sequel kept hyping his powers, where sorcerer grades can't measure his strength. He can destroy a nation, he's compared to nukes, and now he finally lives up to the name, shutting down any doubts people had that he's on Gojo or Sukuna's tier. Because what happens next is insane. Like cluster bombs, Dabura generates masses of light that reflect on Mahoraga, instantly vaporizing him into nothing. Bro literally has the top part of his torso and head disappear. And most of you would think that would be GG, but Daddy Raga is built different. He regenerates instantly and spins his wheel again, making it 3, leaving only 1 to 2 left. However, the disrespect continues. Dabura plants his stinky ass feet on his face, fires his technique at maximum output. The city isn't just hit, it's flooded. Arrays of cursed light tear through buildings like paper, collapsing entire blocks at once. And this isn't a domain expansion, but the scale is similar to Sukuna's raw power detonating across the city. And when everything finally collapses, the destruction doesn't fade. Aurora-like streaks of cursed light remain hanging in the sky. Residual energy from Dabura's attack staining the atmosphere itself. Now, as the buildings continue to collapse, Dabura figures it all out. He understands that it's getting used to his technique and adapting to create a countermeasure. But the peak writing and fights aren't over. We move on to Maru vs Tsurugi. They clash swords, but using the Honoyagi sparks and the strengths of heavenly restriction, Tsurugi surprises Maru. He asks the same question Sukuna once did against Maki. How does a physically gifted body different from energy enhancement when it comes to strength? but Maru sees a problem immediately. You know how Toji was too hard to detect and also caught Gojo off guard? Well, even the 6 eyes, Gojo said he had to rely on instincts rather than anything else. And now the same thing is in effect. Maru cannot predict anything Tsurigi is going to do. All his attacks are now a surprise. And eventually, Tsurigi gains the upper hand by manipulating the energy in his weapon to perform its technique. The sparks are then infused onto his blade, enveloping in flames, destroying him. As a result, he claps his cheeks, beating Maru in physical combat and sending him crashing into a wall, laying flat. But this is only round 1 and it isn't over. As we learn the other way Yuka can actually survive the ritual, Dabra would have to leave the planet because just like the curse on his sister, the range of the ritual shouldn't reach beyond planet Earth. However, Maru claims Dabra won't return to Simuria because he is included in the conditions of his sister's curse. If he returns into its range, it would be too risky, causing her to die. The only real solution was using the black rope, but there's no time for that now. Maru then laments in self-reflection that Dabra held back against his best friend and now he's doing the same thing. Just like him, he's terrified of losing friends and doesn't want anyone to get hurt or killed. But just as Maru is about to give in to sympathy, his inner consciousness speaks. Manifested through the third eye, it whispers like a devil on his shoulder. How can he call himself a warrior if he disrespects his opponent's dignity by holding back? That single thought snaps him. Maru decides to stop restraining himself. His expression shifts instantly to pure murderous intent. We learn the name of his technique as well, as it's called Chaos and Order. Absolutely lit writing, by the way. Bruh, fire coming from the pages. That name of the technique. Woohoo! Now, the moment it activates, the balance of the world collapses. Just like his fight against the old man, the rules of physics stop behaving normally. Chapter 17 opens up with laying that all down about Yuta's own family. Yuta and Maki smashed with their son Iori being born in 2031. He is a spitting image of Yuta and ended up marrying a woman named Mifuyu. Mifuyu is the same woman that appears in chapter 1, who told Yuka at age 10 that she can't have Rika's ring despite Yuta wishing for her to have it, instead giving it to Tsurigi, telling him what he wants is irrelevant. Mifuyu married into the Gojo and Zenin family, following their decisions on who is best suited to inherit Rika's power. This set the seed for Tsurigi's motivation to become strong, to prove the clan's wrong that he doesn't need it. Now, a lot of us were angry that she's an idiot, but with chapter 17 we understand a lot more, because Mifuyu was left alone with Tsurigi and Yuka as their father left them as soon as she was born. As a result, this explains why our MCs cling so hard to their grandparents and want to be like them, as they admit in chapter 2. Maki and Yuta had to step in to give them a real childhood and train them, filling the void their father left behind. But why exactly did Iori leave? Well, chapter 17 reveals that Tsurigi was curious to know as well. He wanted to know what kind of person his father was. Yuta and Maki avoided the subject, but he secretly went around asking members of the Gojo clan. Iori was a serious and diligent person, but that backfired. He was chasing a standard he could never reach. Bro was basically a power scaler, and he dived so deep into it, he said, oh shit, wait a second, we're weak as hell and our generation is cooked. None of us are special grades. So compared to the generation before him, he felt weak. How could they live up to legends like his parents, Yuji, or even Satoru Gojo? And then his power scaling didn't stop. When compared to the sorcerers beneath him and under his wing, he felt responsible. Sorcerers are only getting weaker, which is widening the problem against stronger curses. What if another Sukuna appears and they can't deal with it? And that pressure turned him into a man who started breaking down mentally. But before he became a deadbeat and left the sorcerer world behind, he met Yuji Itadori. Iori was lashing out at Yuji about his problem, but our goat said it doesn't matter. Chapter 17 team then picks up the fight between friends immediately. Maru's technique of chaos and order disrupting physics has Tsurigi on the back burner. He doesn't understand the technique yet and almost falls off a building. He can't even get close. Maru then immediately jumps in to stab and is launching him all over the building like a play toy, but eventually he figures out a counter and makes both of them lose their swords. But as they race to pick them up, they clash once again. However, Tsurigiri's sword is caught between Maru's blade, trapping him inside using his physical strength against him. With that, he busts him outside and they have a chat mid-air before the final blow. Tsurigiri thinks to himself that he might have won, and even if there was a 1% chance that Yuka can be saved, then he would always bet on that, just like Maru would for his own cause. Now this beautifully connects to another plot point from the original manga that you cannot forget. Remember that Kenjaku stated, life is a gamble, and people who do not take a step in action whilst looking at death in front of their eyes, they are absolutely detestable. Even Hakari believed that everyone in life gambles on something. This is their fever of trying to change things in some way. But the true manner of dealing with this fever is by gambling. He thinks that society tramples on people who can't bet big enough, meaning people who can't take chances to progress their goal. This is something even Gojo mentioned to Yuta whilst they were training, mentioning the fever once again. So this is something that we find Cross, Yuka and Tsurigiri doing, right? And it will tie into how they will make Maru have a change of heart to gamble on coexistence once again, since his ass is about to get beaten into a pulp. Because although Tsurigiri gets completely destroyed, multiple cars thrown at him, explosions, a whole ass building collapsing and dashed into the ground, if this dude was any other human without heavenly restriction, then he would have been finished. Now the look of despair on Maru's face tells it all. Obviously my guy doesn't want his friend to suffer by his hands and he doesn't want to kill him, but Maru's love for his brother and his duty as a warrior supersedes everything. However, Tsurigiri is not done. He thinks about his father's ideology of valuing strength and power. He accepts that being born great and having a great death is something to be proud of, but he can't accept that way of thinking. Like Yuji, who told Sukuna how every life and memory is precious, he thinks that even if a person's life is ordinary and vague, as long as their everyday existence was out there, then that was enough. This testament is a reference to his father, who saw himself as trash, became depressed, and then disappeared. Now at this moment, Yuta's ring on his neck starts glowing. Curse energy floods out. Tsurigiri thinks his grandpa is here, but no, it's the queen of curses, Rika. She disappointingly tells him how takes off the Maki, calling her that woman, reminding us how Rika was obsessed with Yuta and was jealous of Maki that she ended up with him, marrying, smashing, all that good shit. Now I do want to mention that this panel right here, oh my god, Hyperdora moment, absolutely fire. Now eventually they form a contract, and because of Yuta's requests and their undying love, Rika was told to help the progeny of his bloodline. So she does just that and tells Tsurigiri to accept the deal. And with one word, he becomes a special grade. Just like we had predicted, he has become one of the strongest sorcerers to exist. Though he doesn't have a full restriction like Koji and Maki, his body is insanely strong. And now with Rika's immense curse energy reserve, he has become completely broken. Rika merges with his body, showing us a new transformation we haven't seen. And before Maru can blink twice and say anything, questioning who this new challenger is, Rika gives him a quick right, sending the Sumerian flying busted all open. So chapter 18 begins with Rika's return to show Maru why Tsurigi still got that dog in him. The ring has Yuta's immense curse energy reserves, which is half of Sukuna, but the highest that any normal human ever possessed. but he wails on Maru so badly. We even got the alien questioning bro's humanity. Maru's technique of breaking physics, changing the rules of the environment, is having no effect. In fact, Rika is having fun treating the breakage of inertia like a freaking roller coaster. The combination of a heavily restricted body with this amount of curse energy is making things way too easy, as anything Maru does gets destroyed. My guy starts imagining that Yuta was a freaking monster and that one person couldn't have done this. Now in truth, we know it is the case, as Yuta was pouring his curse energy into this tool as a storage device. Like, if they ever saw Sukuna, it would be baffling to these aliens. They would be shitting their pants. Instead, Rika just tanks it and headbutts him, following up with a freaking punch. This sends Maru flying across the city, and he now understands that Suguri is going to bulldoze through his techniques, so he needs to step it up. And as things escalate, Tsurugi apologizes to Maru, saying he will win this no matter what. But Maru says that there's no need to apologize because he's got a trick up his sleeve. He sprouts trees from everywhere and doesn't intend to lose. In the meantime, we have Mahoraga aura farming like nobody's business because time is up. Dabra attacks with his light once more, but Daddy Raga, he's finally adapted, which completely shocks him and throws Dabra off guard. He even tries blowing his face up with point blank energy, but ends up being ineffective once again. The Shikigami then pulls up and instantly starts violating Dabra, throwing hands and starts dog walking the dude. It is so one-sided that Dabra starts realizing how badly he messed up. Now, before the clown music keeps going, we need to address the problem. We have to give Dabra credit where credit is due. We all know Mahoraga has always been the litmus test for the title of strongest. He even faced a 6 Eyes Limitless user 400 years ago and took that Gojo head out. Jujutsu Kaisen's power system is like rock, paper, scissors, where figuring out the opponent's ability is half the work. Gojo had the entire clan's history and all the info he needed to know exactly what Mahoraga's ability is before he even fought it. Sukuna could compare him to Yamato no Orochi to further understand Mahoraga and had vast experience of battles from the Heian era. I mean, why else is there even a concept of telling people your curse technique as a binding vow to strengthen your power? So to get to the point, Dabra has nothing. It's his first time ever seeing a Shikigami, as he's confirmed that nothing like this exists in Simuria in chapter 16. But even still, Dabra almost figured out adaptation but needed more time to confirm it. As a result, he's literally getting pummeled, thinking he's going to lose for the first time. Mahoraga whacks him straight into a flashback where we learn a bit more about his friendship with Dola. Dabra was never close to his tribe of Diskunte. For a matter of fact, he'd spend more of his time with Dola than his own people, since he never got along with them. Whenever Dabra tried to befriend them, they'd feel uncomfortable and felt hatred. As a result, Dabra's heart would be in pain and he doesn't actually like fighting. Dabra calls his friend Dola amazing because he realizes the sense of fear and pain he is in now. But that wasn't the case for his best friend. Dola was a proud warrior, and even though he was going into a losing battle to die, he stood on business and gave a speech to the tribes for a better future. Now, the reading comprehension curse is at an all-time high right now. Dabra being scared here is actually brilliant writing because it perfectly mirrors Yuji's very first real fight against the Finger Bearer Special Grade. Now remember the moment where Yuji realizes that strength alone doesn't prepare you for death. Back then, Yuji wasn't scared because he was weak. He was scared because for the first time, he understood that he could actually lose and die. He starts panicking and even breaks down crying because the gap between I'm strong and I'm fighting something that can kill me, it finally hits him. That same emotional moment is happening to Dabra, since he has never actually fought for real before, just one-tapping everyone. He hates hurting people because it's effortless and isolating, and he's judged just for being strong. But unfortunately, the beatdown continues and Dabra awakens his potential, because when you must fight to protect your loved ones and his sister, that is what makes a true warrior. Like bro, people are missing the point. Think about it. Yuji needed Sukuna to awaken his true potential. Gojo needed Toji to find the core of Kur's energy and gain RCT. The same logic has to be applied. Dabra has now awakened and he said he's literally going to beat Mahoraga's ass with his fists. He catches his punch and shatters Mahoraga's executioner blade like nothing. And as he farms aura, Mahoraga actually gets pushed back for the first time, showing hesitation, realizing that this was dangerous and that it could have died. Dabra's awakening is insane, surpassing even Gojo and Sukuna. For the first time in recorded history, Dabra enters sublight speed. He's raising his body strength to the absolute maximum. Dabra's awakening has him reaching sublight speed, which has never been witnessed by humanity. Now, when something moves almost as fast as light, it's carrying a ridiculous amount of energy. So the moment Dabra hits something, all of that raw kinetic energy equates to over 20 SAR nukes in his fists. However, he makes a mistake almost instantly. Because it's so hard to control all this power, he physically hits Mahoraga, ripping his arm off instead of one-shotting him, which allows Daddy Raga's wheel to spin and gradually adapt to it, allowing him a chance to survive. Now, the illustration of sublight speed is beautifully done. Dabra is moving so fast that Mahoraga isn't seeing where he is, it's seeing where he was and scrambling to catch up. And because there is so much force behind it, buildings and anything within his space is instantly destroyed. But now that Dabra understands adaptation, he commits to a kick designed to one-shot him. And that's when Nareda-kun steps in with some physics. As speeds approaching light, the air in front of Dabra can't move out of the way fast enough, so it violently compresses. That compression heats the air into superheated plasma, creating resistance so extreme that it behaves like hitting a solid wall, slamming back with immense pressure. Now, using Einstein's energy equation of E equals mc squared, even a conservative estimate puts the energy behind Dabra's kick in nuclear level territory. And before you say, oh my god bruh, ABD is glazing Dabra way too hard, bruh, the reading comprehension curse is real, because Naoya literally said strength is weight and speed, which is exactly what the energy equation is. So no, I'm not talking out of my ass. Therefore, when Dabra lands the attack point blank, the result makes perfect sense. The ground scars and the city detonates outward and the environment is erased. The same kind of lasting damage only Gojo and Sukuna have ever caused. Mahoraga would have definitely died from this attack, but due to the mistake he made earlier, that small adaptation was enough for a small piece of his body to survive. Dabra quickly deduces that it must be capable of adapting to brute force physical attacks way faster than a complex curse technique. So that basically means people like Toji and Maki are never killing this dude. 2 attacks would cause 2 spins and it's basically game over. As a result, Big Raga regenerates instantly, but this only makes Dabra more excited at the challenge, because for the first time in his life there's a part of him that's finding fighting fun. So Ui in chapter 15, he was right. He wanted his grandchildren to see the peak, stating that they have never seen the pinnacle of violence a human can reach. And now the kids have witnessed a nuke go off. But it doesn't end there. When Ui said Dabra's loneliness will be satisfied for once, it's very important to understand what it all means, because Dabra's parallel with Gojo goes way deeper than being feared as the strongest or treated like a weapon. In chapter 236, Gojo's own friends admit the uncomfortable truth. He loved fighting and he was genuinely glad he died to someone stronger, because it meant his life finally ended in a way that made sense to him. That same philosophy lives inside Dabra. He wants to be a warrior, and a warrior needs an equal able to define themselves. So just like Gojo during his battle with Toji, when everything clicked and he declared himself the honored one, even though Toji thought he was tweaking and high, Dabra is experiencing that same ecstasy. Now in JJK, you understand curse energy through pain and pushing yourself to the edge. That's how Makito gained domain expansion, that's how Gojo unlocked RCT and understood its core, so on and so forth. As a result, Dabra's fight with Mahoraga feels like a dance. He wants to keep fighting to hone his skills and become a version of himself that he's never known. But due to using light speed on his leg, it's completely torn apart, which brings us to his genius. No more slander will be tolerated, as chapter 19 literally proves he is as talented, if not more than Gojo. He remembers Usami telling him that the Earthlings have some sort of healing capability which they offered to help both Maru and Cross, and in a single moment, with zero prior instruction, everything clicks. He deduces it all in a split second. Curse energy alone can't heal, but then he senses something different. The same positive energy flowing through Mahoraga's blade, just like Sukuna once noticed. From that alone, Dabra realizes the exact principle Gojo explained back in chapter 74. Reverse curse technique works by multiplying two negatives to create a positive. Gojo himself admitted he could never do it until Toji nearly killed him. It took a life or death awakening. But now Dabra is going through the exact same thing, and Sukuna was said to be someone that could see any technique once and replicate it, which means Dabra has even matched the king of curses, since he had no prior knowledge or observation of how it's done. Now because of the duel, curses across Tokyo begin to scatter, fleeing the area just to survive. The problem isn't their strength. Most of them are only grade 3, but they exist in overwhelming numbers. The truly dangerous curses aren't running at all. They stay behind, just like the stronger ones that we saw in chapter 12. The council then gathers all the sorcerers to be designated to a 10-kilometer zone to exercise them all, funneling them into a specific area thanks to changing the barrier around Tokyo. However, they need to limit the casualties in this operation. Only Yuka should be the sacrifice. But in typical fashion, Osaki creates an issue of distrust. There could be a trick to all of this. After all, humans made the first move of killing Cross. He claims that there is no guarantee that sorcerers would honor the rules of the Discunte duel, as they need to ensure that no one interferes. And that's when the tension hits a boiling point. The Sumerians and sorcerers squabble again, and they are about to fight each other drawing their weapons. But little do they know who's waiting outside the building. Yuji can hear everything, and he bloody does a JoJo reference saying yara yara daze, and that he knew this would happen. The council have been looking for Yuji this entire time and had no luck. But this time, Mino spots him and is shocked to see him activating piercing blood. He's so powerful now and has so much control over the technique that it splits into countless strands. Yuji detects all the curse energy users in the building and sends them out like homing missiles to disarm every single person, with them having no time to react. However, Yuji, with only a tiny bit of his power, shatters the entire building with blood spewing everywhere, where he then aura farms, stating if it was a bit too much since he only used 1% of his power. However, in chapter 20, Osaki immediately jumps out of the building to attack with his axe at full power. But this dumbass doesn't know who he's dealing with, because with just a palm of his hand, Yuji brushes it aside like nothing happened. Yuji showcases his mastery in Shrine instantly, because just like Sukuna did against Yuta, by using precise slashes like a chainsaw, they can grab a blade without touching it. However, Osaki notices something special about Yuji. His aura is just like a Kalyan. Right now, he's aura farming like never before. Osaki looks pretty durable, so without a second's notice, he charges up a punch to end his whole career. there, Mino comments that Yuji's precision of control is so advanced that there is no delay in his energy going into his fist. This is a reference to chapter 235, where the occurrence of energy wells up in a sorcerer using any ability. But this proves Yuji's efficiency has reached Sukuna and Gojo's level with the 6 eyes. But the people in this era are astonished to see it firsthand. Yuji then performs a black flash at will with zero effort. Osuke bounces around like this Looney Tunes character flying kilometers across the city knocked out. But he isn't done cooking. His mastery of blood manipulation is on full display as he creates a non-lethal attack on Mino and everyone else in the building. They instantly start shaking and vomiting, and that's because Yuji has the ability of his brothers thanks to his unique physiology as a death painting wound. So just like Choso, Yuji's blood has a special poison which drains its victim's stamina, causing them to get sick. However, Yuji once again says he doesn't care. Haven't we had enough of Yuji Itadori? That line mirrors Gojo himself. He knew the world leaning on a single pillar was a mistake. He carried it anyway, and when he fell, everything collapsed. Yuji watched what happens when everyone assumes the strongest will handle it, and he refuses to let history repeat itself with him at the center. And when you look at the line that he states, it actually hits even harder when you realize what he's referencing. He states, "Veterans don't die, they just fade away." He's directly quoting General Douglas MacArthur's farewell speech. That line was about stepping aside, about knowing when your role in history is over, even if you're still capable of fighting. So Yuji feels like his role as a sorcerer is finished. Yuji then states that he will take care of all the cursed spirits escaping Tokyo, and if Yuta's granddaughter loses against Dabura, he will clean up all the mess. He does not want the Deskunte duel to be interrupted, nor the battle between Maru and Tsurugi. This leads to Mino saying he will not forget about Yuji, nor will he forgive him, but the only response he receives is a sarcastic laugh, because truthfully Yuji admits his loneliness, and after he explains that everyone hit by his blood manipulation would need 2 to 3 days of rest, Mino completely snaps. He doesn't understand Yuji's intentions, because from his perspective, Yuji refused to become humanity's champion against Dabura. To him, Yuji abandoned responsibility, but this reminds our MC of Gojo, stating, "That's the right choice, isn't it, sensei?" This all leads to Yuji's memory before fighting Sukuna. Gojo is exhausted and asked, "Haven't we had enough of Gojo?" He wanted his students to surpass him, and the only way for them to grow beyond him was for the ceiling to disappear, because why would anyone aim higher when the strongest already exists? Gojo, just like Yuji, is solving every problem, so growth stagnated around them. So now Yuji completely understands his sensei. The sorcerers have been getting weaker and weaker since 68 years have passed, but this Jujutsu world needs to have a balance. That means the best solution is for Yuji to stay in the shadows, letting them face hardship so they can grow. And speaking of growing in power, Dabura once again proves that he could be the strongest of all time. Not only did he unlock RCT in an instant, he applied its knowledge into his technique to create reversal. And this isn't even the limit to his potential, because Dabura can also combine light and darkness for a new imaginary technique that can destroy reality, much like how Gojo created purple through mixing blue and red. As a result, Mahoraga is shook, and we see Dabura smiling again, as he just created a black ball of gravity mass that's sucking everything into a black hole. He reclaims the path of victory against Mahoraga, but this time he will make sure to finish him off in a single attack. Now whilst Dabura is leveling up, Tsurugi and Maru are still going at it. With the help of Rika, Tsurugi is not only keeping up with Maru's awakening, but also overwhelming him. But suddenly, they notice this massive wave wave of cursed spirits heading towards them. They are mass migrating in fear of Dabura. However, Maru gets distracted by the cries of the cursed spirits, which gives Tsurigi an opening to enact his plan. He pulls out the soul split katana out from Rika's storage, the same one that Mai curated for Maki. Rika then tells him to swing it with everything he's got, and she'll add curse energy. And oh boy, he did, because Maru realizes what he was aiming for. But it doesn't end there. Yuji shows up as well to show off his very own dismantle. Both their attacks slice through each and every cursed spirit in an instant. And in terms of power scaling, this is just ridiculous. The result is a nuclear explosion. And when you take into account Tokyo's geography, the range of Yuji's dismantle is at least 6 kilometers across. The cloud that is reaching the sky is the dust left behind from cursed spirits being destroyed. But that isn't the point everyone should know. The fact that Yuji's dismantle can travel such a huge range is ridiculously OP. However, due to all this death, Maru's eye starts tweaking out. The death of these spirits causes severe pain. He then takes advantage of Maru's weakness and strikes him across the body. With Maru deciding to finish this, Tsurigi starts step 2 of his plan. My guy uses a binding vow to completely eradicate his cursed energy. Tsurigi then thanks Rika and she passes on, giving her his blessing. He then becomes one of the strongest, and his speed gets even faster, destroying Maru, the friend that he once had. Chapter 21 begins with a tragedy that can't help but bring a grown man like me to cry. Seconds before Tsurigi kills Maru, he thinks back to his time with Grandma Maki. From the very beginning of Jujutsu Kaisen, Principal Yaga told us that no sorcerer dies without regret. Now old and grey, Maki pours her heart out, giving her grandson advice to do things differently. She tells Tsurigi how much they are alike, not only in personality, but in their pursuit for power to prove everyone who denies their existence wrong. Maki explains a way to gain strength is by losing something that is cherished, but that kind of strength is a double-edged sword, so he should be careful and not throw away things he never needed to lose. So as Maki tears up, she thinks back to Mai. Because of her sacrifice, Maki became stronger, but not a day goes by that she doesn't think of a future where Mai lives on. Someone else could have taken Maki's role, or fixed the things she was fighting for, warning Tsurigi that the sacrifice of those important will only lead to regret. So even though Maki became one of the strongest, proved the Zenin clan beliefs to be wrong, destroyed misogyny, and became a legend to the world, all of that doesn't matter. Just like Yuji said, right? None of this matters, because all of Maki's actions were to create a world where someone like Mai could exist, but in the end it lost a part of its meaning with her gone, as Maki's love for her sister was more important. And we know Tsurigi shares these feelings because before fighting Maru, he declared how much he cherishes Yuka, that even if she has one more day to live, he wants her to live it at the most. This also connects to Yuka confessing her love, claiming that once she gets reborn, she would want to be Tsurigi's little sister again. As a result, he understands that killing Maru, who became his friend, it won't be worth pursuing his goal, resulting in a decision he won't regret. He lets the katana go and loses the fight. And that's when Maru questions why he did this. Tsurigi falls unconscious, claiming it felt wrong, and a future where he wins like this wouldn't be right. At the end of the day, he's only 17 years old. This connects to Gojo and the message of kids having to go to war, and this needs to stop. They need to live out the best years of their lives. Maru then breaks down crying, paralleling Yuji after the Shibuya massacre. He starts starts questioning everything he is doing. Why was he so obsessed with the idea of being a warrior, to the point that he wanted to kill his best friend, whom he originally claimed was to see if humans can be their neighbors, but now he just seems like a hypocrite. Maru starts spiraling downward, realizing that they are the ones seeking help, needing a place to take refuge. Tsurigi and the others had been living on Earth long ago. They had their own way of life, which included how they perceived cursed spirits to be evil. The Sumerian are doing exactly what the Disconte did to them by invading their land and enforcing their own beliefs, which Dura literally states in his speech before dueling Dabra, right? So this makes Maru fall into despair. What is someone meant to do when they have never had a place to begin with and have had their homes taken away? He then asks, who does the Earth and universe truly belong to? Maru questions if the people who were there first gives them the right of ownership. However, whilst begging for help to create an understanding between their races, Maru's prayer is finally answered. Rika's soul appears. She left a small part of herself in the manifestation of the Queen of Curses, anchored between the realm of the dead and the living, similar to how Mahito's soul was able to stick around in limbo outside the cycle of samsara. Rika stayed in the world of the souls waiting for Yuta to pass on, but she was told to look after his grandchild for a short period of time. That's why Rika guides Maru to a solution with the Kalyan. But before we dive into that huge bombshell, we move on to Dabra learning domain expansion. This just made him potentially the strongest sorcerer of all time. But how did Dabra figure out barrier techniques? Well, the Kalyan upon the Nunark ship sent down inspiration. But it's not only that. Remember in chapter 2, Tsurigi asked how could the spaceship float above them without nobody noticing? Well, we are told the aliens know barrier techniques and casted a curtain to hide it. As a result, Dabra uses his genius talent to create a domain, asking Mahoraga if humans also know how to do this. In the meantime, with his curse technique reversal active, all the buildings are being destroyed and getting drawn into his black hole. However, Mahoraga sees only one counter to attain victory. The adaptation wheel is spinning like crazy over and over again non-stop, but instead of countering light or curse energy, it's adapting to Dabra's existence. This makes it the first time that Dabra has ever wanted to exchange words with someone, as he always stayed reserved and quiet. And that's when it all happens. He does a hand sign for domain expansion, calling it another world of the unseen, the manifestation of reverse crossing. This world looks inspired from Interstellar, when Cooper entered the fifth dimension. Now remember that expansions manifest the user's innate domain, a mental landscape that embodies the mind of an individual which they are born with. So let's dive into Dabra's mind, because he is clearly using the Shambhala Mudra. Shambhala in Buddhism represents the mythical hidden kingdom protected by enlightened warriors. Warriors who fight so peace can exist. These warriors of Shambhala are alone by nature and stand between worlds. Now just like Dabra, who has the curse of solitude that comes with strength, as he is fighting for the Sumerians on planet Earth, this mudra fits Dabra because it reflects why he chose the path of a warrior in the first place, a promise shaped by the bond with his best friend Dura to create the kingdom he had wished for his people. But the climax of Dabra against Mahoraga, it's actually saved for later, because we pop back to the Nunark ship where Maru and Yuji are teleported to. Yuji sees the Kalyan for the first time and already knows everything about it due to Todo feeding him information. We are told in chapter 2 that any information managed digitally is basically leaked. especially from the government that is scrambling to maintain their system and keeping up with regulation. That means Todo basically told his best friend Do everything by getting a hold of classified documents. Maru then explains that they brought the longest living Kalyan with them, and Yuji confirms its presence feels similar to a cursed spirit whilst patting it with affection. However, Maru's harmony ability determines that Yuji is suitable. In order to seek balance with harmony, his technique found a person who is an equal match to the Kalyan, just like he did in chapter 1 to find Tsurugi. And since Yuji's presence and energy feels like Kalyan, just like Osuki confirmed, everything starts to make sense. But what is the plan exactly? Well, Yuji will fulfill what everyone wished for, ending the existence of curses altogether. Yuji states this was his big brother Choso and Yuki's wish. So when Modulo introduces Maru's plan to eliminate curses entirely, Yuji agrees because it solves every problem. In his agreement, our boy passes Yuki's research on the soul, and Maru confirms that Yuta was storing his immense reserves of energy into the ring for decades upon decades. This means it has an astronomical amount like the special Mul ores from their Sumerian planet. They want to combine these two energies together, as it would be enough to affect every single person in the world to stop leaking cursed energy just like Yuki originally planned. Yuji will be the representative and witness for humanity, as Maru does not want to impose a decision and proceed with this without the permission of the strongest. Yuki's research ends up being the most important. Remember that in chapter 14, Tsurugi made Maru confirm that the Mul ores not only can respond to energy, which in this case would be from Yuta's ring, but also cursed techniques, which is where Mahito's idol transfiguration comes in to change everyone's soul. Yuji ends up agreeing with Yuki because she was correct all along. She concluded that Jujutsu society was flawed at its core. Sorcerers were never solving the problem. They were cleaning up the consequences of energy. However, Yuji can now end the cycle by finishing the story. As a result, Maru takes Yuji to the crossroads where every soul on Earth inhabits. Now within the ship, Maru opens a door to that world, and that's where Mahito appears. At first, he's ecstatic, busting nuts. He waited decades for Yuji to die just so they can speak again. He wonders how Yuji died, but then he is surprised to find out his worst nightmare actually came true. Because remember, no matter what form, what name, what era, Yuji will come and kill him. Chapter 22 begins with Yuji staring down Mahito as he shits his pants. They confirm the plan to use idol transfiguration to reshape the souls of Japanese people. Maru is waiting for Yuji's permission, but he claims Mahito isn't the type that would willingly help. He needs to be beaten into submission. This is because the plane they are residing in is a crossroad for souls, and since Mahito has no physical body here, if he is defeated, he would become a tool. But Prime Yuji knows he's too strong. He fears he might accidentally kill Mahito in the process. Bro forms aura, kneeling down to ask Mahito, "Are you ready to throw hands, bitch?" And like a child, Mahito rages out completely at Yuji looking down on him, immediately recreating the environment to be like Shibuya. It's pure psychological warfare. Mahito wants to prove to Yuji that you're still that weak kid. You're still the murderer of Shibuya with trauma. But as Yuji would say, it doesn't matter. Mahito instantly activates his technique, twisting the space around them and spawning warped creatures from every direction. This is his realm, where everything bends to his will. And if Yuji manifests even the slightest physical form in this space, then Mahito Mahito believes he can reshape it with a single touch for victory. Everything then collides into a huge sphere, with Mahito believing he's stronger than ever due to his environmental advantage. He activates domain expansion to touch Yuji's soul, but it all fails. Mahito doesn't even finish the incantation. His tongue is ripped clean out mid-sentence, and every single finger is severed before the domain signs can complete. We then get the coldest, most disgusting, and most powerful feat in all of JJK history. Yuji still has his hands in his pockets. No domain, no hand signs, no nothing. He has cut everything equally in all directions on the entire soul plane. Now as he fears for his life, Yuji walks up to him and says, "Bro, listen, were you always this weak?" And he throws his headpiece to Maru. Like, those are Sukuna's genes working overtime, people. This is the type of stuff the king would say to his weaker opponents. So with Mahito defeated and his techniques secure, the plan to change the world begins. But Yuji thinks about his friends, wondering if Mahito messed with them when they passed through the cycle of samsara. After all, Mahito did wait for Sukuna and spoke to him, but Maru claims souls cannot interfere with one another as Mahito doesn't have much curse energy anymore. However, for the subjugation, Maru using his technique brought Mahito back to his full strength. And I think at this point, we can say Maru's technique is basically whatever Gege wants it to be, as the whole plot is because of it. Bro created an intergalactic spaceship, can break physics and inertia, can make aliens speak to humans learning language instantly, absorb information, make a door to the soul world, create harmony. Bro, like, what can this technique not do at this point? But now, everything is finally in place. Mahito has been reduced to nothing more than a tool, where the irony has peaked, because this patch face would make dolls of others but now has become one. Also, Yuki's lifetime of research on the soul has been fully integrated into the plan. The Mul ores are confirmed to absorb not just curse energy but curse techniques themselves, and inside the ring it has decades of Yuta's stored curse energy to make this plan work. So Yuji begins discussing the next step. This is where Yuki's true plan comes in. She believed curses exist because humans leak energy through negative emotion. So she proposed two solutions. The first one is to remove curse energy from humans entirely, and option 2, make everyone a sorcerer so curse energy could be controlled. However, both these scenarios, they actually create huge problems. Yuji instantly challenges option 2, stating it's not viable for their goal. The harm from the spirits would just turn into violence from curse users instead. And he's not wrong. Think about it. Turning everyone into sorcerers is insanely reckless, because before Modulo, monsters like Gojo and Sukuna were extremely rare calamities, happening over centuries. Sukuna was only remembered 1,000 years later because he could take over the world compared to a nuke. Gojo's birth literally shifted the balance of the world. Now imagine making millions of people potential sorcerers. You drastically increase the probability that someone like Gojo or Sukuna appear on a regular basis. Now, although that would give us more peak fiction and would be cool to see, risk this. There is zero guarantee that they would be good people. For example, if someone is born with a curse technique capable of planetary destruction, what would happen? Yuki's black hole didn't end the world because Tengen's barriers contained it, and because she restrained herself. But give that level of power to someone evil, it would be game over. So let me make this easy for you to understand. If Yuji makes everyone a sorcerer, he just recreated the exact same burden Gojo carried, being the one guy who has to police the entire world by himself. And the worst part is that cursed spirits will still spawn. But let's move on to Yuji's other option of removing curse energy altogether. Maru brings up heavenly restriction, thinking people like Tsurigi and Toji will still constantly be born. But Yuji corrects this misunderstanding, that their level of power beyond humans only occurs if you have the potential for it. So they decide that the best option is number 1, for humans and Sumerians. Now because the Sumerians are not responsible for making cursed spirits, Yuji questions why do they need to be involved. Maru explains that for their race to be accepted on Earth, they cannot have a huge advantage of curse energy over them. So to avoid future conflict, both races have to undergo the procedure. In the end, Maru also sees this as an atonement for the troubles they have caused, and this will help their public image, as everyone will think the world became a better place because they met the Sumerians. But unfortunately, Yuji breaks his bubble and tells him what they are about to do is actually a great sin. Not everyone wants cursed energy to be stripped away from Earth, especially now that governments have spent billions on research to make a new source of energy for the world. Hundreds of years from now, oil and other non-renewable energy will be exhausted. So this potential replacement being taken away will actually piss a lot of people off, especially America. And then there's the fact that they are meddling with other people's bodies without consent. So with this reality check, Maru starts questioning his resolve. But Yuji says no, we will still do it. Now why? You're probably asking yourself that, and now I'm gonna break it all down. Well, this falls back to what Megumi said to Yuji. As sorcerers, they are not heroes fighting for justice. Megumi didn't save Yuji due to logical reasons. He just didn't want to see a good person die, where it ended up being a selfish emotional decision. No one can truly judge them. They must continually prove the worth of their existence, and they don't have the luxury of thinking about themselves. They just have to save people. This mentality is also why Yuji ate Sukuna's finger in the first place, because he knew in his heart that he was the only one that could do it. So right now, the responsibility to usher the world into a new era of peace, it falls upon Yuji. So it doesn't matter what others think or what they have to say. Yuji is fine with being hated, hence why he decided to let Yuka take the burden of fighting Dabura, and why he accepted Mino's hatred in chapter 20 when he said that he would never forgive him. Yuji then reveals that he will live for another 300 more years according to his calculation. He will protect the world and can accept punishment for what humanity deems for him. However, another question is addressed. If curse energy is removed, will Yuji start aging? So the solution is actually not to interfere with the current generation. That way, everyone's lives won't be turned upside down. However, the story ends on a huge cliffhanger. Yuji states that both plans are a flop because spirits will still exist, with Maru being bamboozled.
Yuji realizes there's a flaw. Cursed spirits would still exist. Why? Well, because Maru's proposal was centered on Japan. Japan is the epicenter of cursed energy due to Tengen's barriers and the historical concentration of sorcerers. But that doesn't mean the rest of the world is empty. Overseas population still emits cursed energy, and cursed spirits are born from this accumulation. Even faint negativity, when pooled over time, can take form. Most of the time that results in low-grade curses, but occasionally when enough weak energy gathers in one place, something stronger can manifest. An example of this is Ganesh, who Kenjaku used against Yuki, and it was a special grade Asian divine curse. Kenny also used it against the United States when he brought it into the White House just to prove a point. You know, that they and curses surpass military power. The world's strongest military force was helpless against it. Ganesh used the curse technique tied to removing obstacles, and in an instant they were teleported outside the building and rained down from the sky. Gege also stated that Angel is meant to be Middle Eastern, hence the technique of Jacob's ladder, and of course we know Miguel is from Kenya. So essentially this proves Yuji's point that their plan is in fact flawed. So the only true solution would be removing cursed energy from all of humanity. But the next question is whether that's realistically possible, because Yuji takes it a step further. Maru's harmony technique can only alter the soul to restrict how much cursed energy a person leaks, not remove it completely, meaning the Japanese would simply become like the people abroad. This is because Maru cannot do anything that will cause harm. Yuji points out that without the metabolism of cursed energy, a person's body will be in danger, as it's a natural part of the human karmic cycle. You know, it's quite comparable to sweating. If you remove that functionality, you're baked. The only people who exist without cursed energy entirely are those with heavenly restriction, but they were born that way, and in exchange they gained enhanced physical bodies capable of handling that imbalance. So if you completely suppress cursed energy in normal humans without some enhancement, their bodies will suffer. That means all they are really doing is just significantly decreasing the number of cursed spirits, not completely removing them. And if that happens, the world is absolutely cooked. The Earth would be in greater danger, because just imagine a world where cursed spirits still exist, but no one is strong enough to defeat them, as everyone is just a regular human. Think of it like Attack on Titan. Imagine if humanity somehow reduced the number of Titans but got rid of their weapons. What you gonna do? Die? Well, no, because Yuji freaking Itadori steps in and says it's gonna be okay, as he will be there to protect the world. He is the strongest and no one will be able to defeat him. Instead, as society grows, Yuji will establish a new countermeasure with the next generation. The amount of curses that will be born every year will be countable on one hand, so the balance between the sorcerers and cursed spirits will be better in the long run. In a way, Yuji is resetting the Jujutsu world, trimming it down to only a handful of individuals. The current sorcerers won't be erased, which means techniques can be preserved, cursed objects can be passed down, and a new smaller power structure can evolve naturally. This would create another power scaling system for a Jujutsu Kaisen spin-off.
You're joking. Not another one?
Yes guys, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna have some sort of new generation where they'll be using cursed objects rather than cursed energy and techniques. Almost like how Fire Force ended up with Shinra reshaping the world, setting the foundation for Soul Eater's universe. But just when it sounds like Yuji has solved everything, Maru interrupts him with another issue about ideology. Come on, give us a break. In his eyes, because the cursed spirits wouldn't be completely erased, humans and Sumerians will still believe in different things. The entire objective was to eliminate curses completely, because the Sumerians don't view them as monsters. They see them as Kalyans, sacred beings tied to their belief system. If curses continues to exist, even in small numbers, the Sumerians would naturally want to protect them, and that alone would spark tension. But don't worry, because Yuji creates another Deus Ex Machina. Instead of only harmonizing humans and the Lemurians, Maru should extend his technique to cursed spirits as well. If the goal is true balance, then you don't just regulate one side of the equation. You have to address the root of what makes curses resemble Kalyans in the first place. Yuji explains that cursed spirits are labeled evil because they are born from negative emotion, but that doesn't mean everything that resembles a curse is inherently malicious. He brings up Tengen not being evil, who began as a human and evolved into something closer to a curse. Then there's Choso, a cursed human hybrid. By nature, he should have been a monster, yet he was the best loving brother he could have ever imagined. So Yuji questions, why do the Kalyans attack some people but not the Lemurians? And since they are in the soul realm, everything essential to the plan is symbolized like toys. That's when Maru looks deeper into the Kalyan's soul, and amongst the many colors, he sees something shocking. They share the same hue, which means cursed spirits always had a soul, but because their vessel were made from negativity, they enacted upon their primal instinct, which made them evil. Now here things get very interesting, because Maru admits it's impossible to repaint the color of souls, but there is a way to fix things, which also addresses the problem of the souls that are yet to be born. Yep, don't worry guys, Gege has given Maru the power of plot convenience. He has answered everything. Maru doesn't plan to just affect the current souls, but also the pathway itself, where they cross before coming to Earth. He will remodel this realm so when the soul pass through the cycle of samsara, their colors will scatter, their shapes will be adjusted, and their cursed energy will be erased as much as possible. My guy's basically just remodeling the pathway where souls cross into Earth and making sure that they get filtered properly, alright? But in doing so, all the Culling soul and the human soul will be mixed up together, meaning that they will truly be one. But now that the yapping is all over, we can finally head back to Dabura versus Mahoraga. Wait, what? What just happened? He did a domain expansion. Gege, please don't do this. We don't even know his ability. You hyped us and now it's off-screened. Gosh dang it.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Well, apparently, Maru defiled his pride as a warrior as he interrupted the fight, preventing Yuka's death. But Dabura claims it's fine, because the only reason he was fighting in the first place was to fulfill his best friend's wish. With Maru telling him that he's happy, Dabura claims his role is over. He fulfilled his promise to Dura, and now even understands what it means to be a warrior due to Mahoraga. But most importantly, he can go back home with his sister, because Maru, using his teleportation hacks, took Dabura to Kenya to get the black rope Osami was talking about. You know, the one which can nullify any and all curse techniques. Yep, his sister was cursed by the discontent chief, and with this tool, it's finally removed. Now nothing chains him to listen to the corrupt higher up. Regardless, after sending his best buddy Dabura and his sister back home, he then manipulates the soul of Yuka, Cross, Usami, and Tsurugi, healing them completely. Maru then parts ways with Yuji and moves forwards with the next phase of the plan. Maru has to do something unforgivable, something his people will hate him for. He has to get rid of all cursed spirits and help them leave Earth. Together with his brother and his new family in Yuka and Tsurugi, they hold hands to perform the first step for peace. In a matter of seconds, every curse in existence is obliterated. Tears leak out of their third eye, and with his Care Bear friends, they create harmony.
Chapter 24 begins with every soul across the countries being altered by harmony. Every sorcerer and Sumerian are in awe of what they are witnessing, where we see Cross wake up from his hospital bed happy, seeing the wheel break just like he promised it would with Yuka in chapter 7. Megumi then appears and interacts with the soul. She states this isn't a normal exorcism, it's a peaceful transition to let each of them find salvation. This is Gege's way of closing a story arc Yuji promised to do in the original manga. Remember, he always questioned what was a proper death. It's a fate that no one can escape, but he always thinks to give his opponents a genuine one. He saw his grandfather die peacefully, he saw curses slaughter people without meaning, he saw sorcerers die with regret, and finally his sensei Gojo going south to die and pass on his dream to it. So through all of it, Yuji wanted to make sure people and curses don't die meaningless, and now he's finally achieved it. Our MC then praises Maru for his result, for having the courage to change the world and affect his own people for the sake of peace. As Yuka wakes up with Mahoraga disappearing, Dabura's domain didn't kill Mahoraga in the end. He actually despawned. The moment Dabura was transported outside the ritual's effective range, the conditions collapsed. Tsurugi warned us back in chapter 16, the ritual ends abruptly if Dabura is taken away from the planet and Yuka's staked life becomes void, allowing her to live. Now upon awakening, Yuka understands this instantly. Instead of panic, she smiles. She looks at the health monitor and realizes something impossible. Her brain is healed and no longer hurts. Maru successfully used idol transfiguration, altering the shape of her soul. He removed the illness at its root. So yeah, go ahead, you can give yourself a round of applause because all of us pretty much predicted this since chapter 6. Yeah, we got this one right. The siblings immediately call each other, and for the first time they truly embrace. Going back to chapter 1, when Tsurugi was kidnapped, these two couldn't stand each other, and Yuka said the first thing she wanted to do was beat his ass. But now we see these two realizing their bond is far more important than any power they strive for. And in that moment, Maru teleports to them, which brings us to that notorious so-called Disney Kaisen panel where everyone is holding hands in peace and it did irreparable damage to this manga. Well, basically that scene, it didn't literally happen.
What the fuck is going on here?
It was Maru's vision. Their souls were connected to him in that instant, giving him the resolve to activate harmony the way Yuji instructed. We then move on to Dabura's story, and it comes to a peak conclusion. Back in Simuria, he pays the chief a visit whilst he was about to smash two baddies. And guys, will you risk it all for them baddies?
It should have been me, not him! It's not fair!
These alien chicks, bruh, even Dabura's sister. You know what I'm saying? Basically, Dabura pulls up and Blood is frozen in place in shock and he can't move. He interrupted his session with them. The guards have already been eliminated and he screams that if Dabura tries anything, his sister Spajo would die. But in a twist, she reveals herself. The dread on the chief Diskunten says it all. He realizes the black rope from Earth broke the curse he placed, meaning he has no leverage against Dabura anymore. And within an instant, a supernova nuke occurs, destroying the entire throne he sits on. And now everyone is still processing all of that and what just happened when Dabura moves in. Before they can even react, a flash of light cuts through the air and in the next instant, he's standing in front of them. The chief's head rolls across the ground. He was beheaded so fast that the two attendants beside him are still clutching his body, not even realizing he's already dead. Or Warana Shinderu type shit, you know what I'm saying? Dabura then steps forward and declares himself the new chief. One by one, they kneel in respect, and in that same breath, Dabura honors the one person who shaped him. He announces that Duro will be given a proper grave and enshrined as a heroic spirit. His ideals will no longer be dismissed as naive. They will become widespread. So this is the beginning of a new age of coexistence on the planet. But bro, he's actually hilarious. He then immediately fumbles the speech because he straight up admits he has no idea what comes next, and he literally says once Dura is honored, he's stepping down. Politics ain't his thing, and the entire room, they basically pause, stun lock, until they burst into laughter, of course. Back on Earth, an important matter needs resolving. The Simurians hold a council meeting where the twins revealed their sin of changing the souls of the future generation and Kalyan. Because the color of their souls have been amended, the Kalyan will attack future generations and kill them, just like it did against other tribes. It will no longer be seen as a deity, as Maru reveals that they only believed in this faith because of their shared trait of color, which means their entire ecosystem and culture is about to change after this one generation, so they need to all step up. They openly debate whether they should dispose of the Kalyan altogether, fearing that if the spirits devour their children in the future, coexistence would be impossible. But despite the fear, they admit they couldn't bring themselves to treat the Kalyan like livestock or wild beasts. So they ask for everyone's opinion rather than rushing to violence. However, we then see Yuji go to Gojo's storehouse of cursed tools to meet Panda. Yuji collected Panda from Gojo's storehouse to then reunite with Nobara. She's aged gracefully, and at 84 years old, she's still beautiful. This is Gege finishing Nobara's character arc from the original series. Because remember, Nobara's story was about redefining what beauty really means. Growing up in a small rural village, she watched people judge and exile anyone who didn't fit society's expectations, especially her friend Sayori, Itadori, who was bullied out of town for just being different. That's why Nobara refused to play by those rules. And if you remember the bonus chapter 271.5, Nobara met her mother, who was the personification of a modern day OnlyFans girl who objectified herself to fulfill her own desires, smashing any man she can find. She's basically Bonnie Blue, as beauty meant everything. And she was this superficial trash person. That's why Nobara didn't give a rat's ass about her and let her grandmother beat her ass. I mean, look at Nobara at 84 years old, and then look at her grandma with one eye and shit. So decades later, Gege shows through Nobara's character that yes, you can be a powerful and beautiful woman on your own terms. But now, Yuji needs Nobara's help to save the world, as her role as a sorcerer isn't over. However, let's put that on pause for now. We then see the aliens reach the final conclusion about the Kalyan. Destroying them would be pointless. Yeah, future generations might no longer recognize them as deities, and there's even the risk that one day people could attack them since their souls would no longer resonate with the Kalyan in the same way. But the elders realized something important. Their bond with the Kalyan was never just about hearing divine voices or worshipping them as gods. It was about the way of life that grew around them. So instead of punishing them, they acknowledged that their actions came from love. Love for their people, love for the Kalyan, and the desire to protect both. So they make a different choice. They refuse to strip the Kalyan of dignity by slaughtering them on the ship. Instead, they will care for them as family. And speaking of family, Tsurigi and Yuka meet their mother again. Mifuyu didn't know of Yuka's brain cancer and was ignored in her children's pursuit of greatness to become strong. This entire journey to fulfill their dream was to be like Yuta and Maki, right? But before leaving, Mifuyu does something neither sibling expected. This moment parallels the emotional closure Maki Zeni never received from her own mother. Mifuyu openly tells Yuka and Tsurigi that she's proud she gave birth to them and will always be proud until death. But seeing how they've grown, it reassures her that they'll be alright. Those simple words carry huge weight because they finally release the lingering curse left behind by the tragic story of Maki and Mai, where their mother failed to express love until it was too late. Maki did not get to hear those words once her mum killed Naoya, but Mifuyu, she's basically saying it outright, I love you guys. So now the entire clan is relieved to see the siblings reconcile, and one person probably watching this all unfold is their father Iori. Now with that truth revealed, their mother reassures the siblings that they don't need to worry about their father anymore, where the two of them finally have a heart-to-heart and realize the real thing that was dividing them, Yuta's ring of course, well that no longer matters. The harmony ritual consumed it, leaving them with the realization that what was truly precious was the bond that they had with each other all along. This beautifully ties into Yuji. We finally get the reveal, people. The hoodie is off and Yuji just gained 1 bajillion fangirls, if you know what I'm saying. This guy looks like a handsome K-pop model with a low taper fade. Basically what I'm trying to say is,
Bro, if I was a girl, legs wide open, bro.
Basically, Yuji watched his friends grow old and die, whilst he aged slowly, and that made him lose sight of what it meant to be human. Yuji explains that his unusual long lifespan comes from consuming the remaining death painting wombs, and those cursed objects altered his body the same way it did his older brother Choso, who lived for over 150 years without aging like a normal person. And just like his brothers, Yuji struggled with his identity. He was caught between being a curse and wanting to live like a human. Similarly, Choso worried about what others would think of him and whether he even had the right to exist amongst people, and Yuji basically inherited that same dilemma. Over time, the weight of being the strongest and the fear of not being accepted made Yuji withdraw from the world. For decades, Yuji believed he shouldn't interfere with the present anymore, because in his mind, he was someone who should have died a long time ago. So after everything he endured and carrying the burden of the entire Jujutsu world, Yuji felt like he was an anomaly, someone who existed beyond his natural lifespan. So he decided the world should move forward without him. Instead of shaping events himself, he wanted to let history unfold naturally, believing it wasn't his place to act. However, in this moment with Nobara, Yuji realizes that thinking was flawed. If he refuses to engage with the present, he loses his connection to both the past and the future. The past is where his purpose was born, his grandfather's final wish, the sacrifices of Nanami, Choso, Gojo, and all the people who died believing that Yuji would carry their will forward. And the future is the world those sacrifices were meant to create, a world without curses where people can live peacefully. However, the present is basically the bridge between the past and future. Without acting now, the past becomes meaningless memories, and the future becomes an empty ideal that never arrives. That's why Yuji realizes that all three must be aligned, and this basically completes his journey. He smiles for the first time, acting like his old self with Nobara after decades, and this isn't something he needs to achieve through his own strength alone like he believed. Yuji asks Nobara and Todo to work with him on a 4-step plan to protect the world in the future, because once curse energy stops leaking from humanity, new sorcerers won't be born anymore. And that means if a cursed spirit appears somewhere in the world, there won't be anyone around to deal with it. So Yuji's solution is to not wait for curses to grow into disasters. They should eliminate them the moment they're born. And to achieve that, the first step of his plan is preserving the entire knowledge system of Jujutsu itself. Everything from exorcism techniques to barrier operations, this generation needs to maintain it by learning everything through them. The blueprint for this comes from Master Tengen. Tengen was essentially the greatest barrier engineer in history, even surpassing Kenjaku in mastery. So Yuji plans to replicate that system globally this time round, not only Japan. That's when Nobara basically agrees that it can work. But Yuji's second step is to identify bloodlines that are likely to produce people with heavenly restriction. These people will be like superhuman weapons. If they can trace these families and map out their lineages, future generations can be trained, stepping in only when the barrier system fails. And remember what Gojo said back in the original series? Around 80% of sorcerers' innate talent is determined by genetics. That means heavenly restriction isn't completely random. Yuji believes it's possible to predict where those people will appear in the next generation. The third step of the plan is to mass produce cursed tools, and Panda says that will actually be easy if the big three clans cooperate. Cursed tools are basically weapons infused with energy, which means even non-sorcerers can use them to fight spirits. And this is where things start to feel like a new power system, because the world will shift towards technology and tools that anyone can wield. Mass-produced cursed tools would allow ordinary people to defend themselves, even you watching the video. You know, you can create a completely different balance of power centuries into the future. It almost feels like this is a sequel bait for a future era where humans with advanced cursed weapons and guardians basically fight a new threat. And that's when Yuji reveals the final step of the plan, and this one is more insane than you think. In a full circle moment that mirrors the beginning of Jujutsu Kaisen, Yuji says that after he dies, he will become a cursed object just like Sukuna. Yuji believes the systems they're building will keep the world stable for 2 to 3 centuries, but the future is unpredictable. After all, aliens freaking showed up on the planet. Humanity could even face another catastrophic World War III, or something even worse could show up. up. So Yuji plans to leave behind one final safeguard, and that is himself. After his death, his body will be turned into an object sealed away, and it won't be a curse this time round, but a deterrent, a weapon known as the demon crushing weapon. If a disaster ever appears that humanity can't handle, someone in the future could consume the object and inherit all of Yuji's power, essentially creating an overpowered sorcerer when the world truly needs one. Now, of course, Nobara immediately looks at him and says, "My guy, have you lost your mind?" And she jokingly says, "Bro, I hope there's someone in the future that is as disgusting as you, because swallowing a corpse to save the world isn't exactly normal or hygienic." But at the end of the day, the ending is not that bad because it actually completes the story. The series began with Yuji eating Sukuna's finger, a cursed object that represented pure destruction and chaos and evil, and now it ends with Yuji becoming the complete opposite, a cursed object that represents humanity's protection. And remember how Yuji's domain represented the Bodhisattva? Well, that is someone who reaches enlightenment and could leave the cycle of samsara, which is exactly what they did in this finale. But guess what? The Bodhisattva chooses not to completely disappear. Instead, they leave something behind or remain connected to the world to guide and protect future generations, which is exactly what Yuji has done. However, guess what, people? That's the moment where we find out Megumi is not around, bro's dead. Megumi really went out with the potential man allegation, still undefeated, bruh. Come on, bruh. Reggie once said to this guy, "Let fate toy with you before you die like a fool and a clown," and that curse finally worked. Potential Man's legacy lives on forever, and yeah guys, the meme came true. Megumi lost to a grade 3 curse and he died.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
But whilst the fandom is busy roasting Megumi from beyond the grave, Gege shows us what the world looks like now, and he does it through baseball. Usami and Jabaloma talk about the massive political shift happening behind the scenes. The higher-ups have officially accepted the situation. Because curses are disappearing, they've agreed to let the aliens remain on Earth. But of course, politics is never simple, right guys? Now, for the sake of stability, they've decided to keep it a secret that no new sorcerers will be born. Jabaloma then mentions that they still have some Maru ores left on the ship that could become a valuable bargaining chip. But without curse energy, bro, that shit is useless. So Isami explains the world has an energy problem. And people, let's be honest, if history has taught us anything, when a powerful country sees a resource it wants, with the recent events that are going on right now, do I need to say more? Yeah, things can get messy real quick. Usami then points out that propaganda will start spreading soon, and instead of highlighting the benefits of coexistence, certain groups will focus on fear and distrust, framing aliens as a threat rather than partners. Which, again, if we're being honest, this is quite on the nose, Gege. Very familiar to real life, and Gege is doing some commentary here. Play the clip again, editor. Usami isn't worried because eventually the truth will come out, and Yuji gave Maru very specific instructions. He told him if anyone pulls up to question anything, tell them that it was Yuji. Blame him. Tell the world Maru was just following orders from the GOAT. And if the higher-ups actually want answers, they can come talk to Yuji directly. His name alone is enough to make people think twice before opposing him. We then move on to the propaganda that Usami was talking about, because a literal conspiracy theory is forming in front of our eyes. Thanks to Ui's crows, Dabura's fight with Mahoraga was broadcasted live. The news claims that 69 years ago it showed Gojo vs Sukuna, Yuji, and the entire raid that went down. That video keeps getting uploaded to YouTube and different platforms, but keeps getting censored and deleted off them. And because they don't know anything about sorcery, they see Mahoraga as the same curse from 2018, and they ponder how it even exists when Gojo supposedly buried it. The newscaster then showcases the whole fight between Dabura and Mahoraga, revealing to the world that he's an alien from Simuria Simuria, hundreds of millions of light years away. But people, Dabura has the best ending of all time. It keeps getting better and better. Bro is just getting glazed non-stop because apparently he's an alien of justice trying to save the planet. He fights the demon in humanity's place, so deserves respect, and Earth should greet him on his return. And bro, he literally came back to clap some cheeks because this is just so funny. Oh my god, I'm actually sick right now, mom. Oh my god. Guys, I'm dying and I'm still trying to get this review out for you guys. Press the like button, please. Subscribe. Basically, Tomo and Dabura, they fell in love at first sight, and now she can't stop thinking about him. But then, through the door to Yuka's hilarious shocked face, the horns that clanked on the door occurred again. He indeed came back. And we know it's Dabura because it's the exact same sound effect, and Dabura's goofy ass not knowing how to walk through doors is basically doing the same mistake. So looking at Tomo's extra volume page all dolled up, we can see why Dabura wanted a piece of that ass and he was so infatuated to marry her straight up. Remember that Usami called this a plus for coexistence, as political marriages in the past have made two cultures aid each other, but this one looks like it's true love. We then swiftly see Ui and his family watching the news, letting us know that he was the source to the reporter to leak everything. He allowed the kids to watch the entire fight, and now they are the very generation that are gonna learn from that experience. However, the story then uses playing catch with baseball to explain the entire message of Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, catch isn't really about the game itself, it's about the communication behind it. You throw the ball, someone receives it, and they throw it back. It's literally conversation made visible to our eyes, right? That's why Usami shifts it into a balls deep idea. When people talk about nations, tribes, or big systems, they forget the individual human beings behind every intricate thing. The story basically reminds us that people don't exist for the nation exists for the people. So yeah, I'm gonna make this comparison real quick. You know that Hokage shit? It's not that if you become Hokage, everyone will acknowledge you. It is the ones who are acknowledged that can become Hokage. Gege is basically saying that countries exist to serve the people, not the other way around. And this makes a lot of sense because so many tragedies happen because individuals were sacrificed for systems. Look at Amai, right? Look at Gojo. And this was usually for Jujutsu higher-ups, clans, or stupid ideology. So the ending of Jujutsu Kaisen with a peaceful game of catch, it's basically symbolic. It represents a world where people finally slow down and value human connection over conflict. So in other words, the answer was simple all along, just try to understand each other. Now, to enjoy more peak fiction about Jujutsu Kaisen, you need to find out how strong Prime Yuji actually was. Can he beat Gojo and Sukuna? We'll learn in this video right now.